reason for entering Ontario. Those with reasons not deemed essential will be turned around but not fined at this time. No other documentation is required aside from the necessary identification to operate a vehicle. Ottawa Police Inspector Michelle Morin explains this is only an OPS operation for the time being.
The OPP have their own jurisdictional issues with boaters from Quebec along the 401 and the 17 and the 417. So they have their operational plan we've shared, and we will mirror their plan.
The inspector doesn't anticipate major issues on the 5 bridges since he feels the general public tends to be very cooperative. More details on the new checkpoints are up at ottawa.citynews.ca. Alex Gouge, City News.
City News time, 9:01. Now, starting tomorrow, anyone who is older than the age of 40 will be able to book their AstraZeneca vaccine in Ontario. Health Minister Christine Elliott's office confirmed that news last night. Pressure to expand the eligibility from the current minimum age of 55 has been mounting for days. City News time at 9:02. An Ottawa police operation has delays around the Walkley and the Heron transit stations this morning. Also, bridges, as mentioned, are very busy heading into Ottawa from Gatineau because of the police checks. Now, with your forecast, here's meteorologist Jill Taylor.
We are heading into quite a weather week. We've got mixed conditions, a slight chance of some showers today, but some clearing too. The high 17 degrees, the wind out of the southwest. Tonight, mainly clear through the evening, chance of showers overnight near 5, and tomorrow, mainly cloudy, the high near 8. For today, the high 17.
And right now in Ottawa, 8 degrees. In Smiths Falls, it's 7. This afternoon's federal budget expected to outline spending plans to get Canadians through the rest of this pandemic and reveal the government's goals for a national child care program. Finance Minister Chrystia Freeland is also expected to deliver measures to boost the supply of affordable housing and protect the environment. This is the government's first budget in more than 2 years, and since the Liberals no longer have a majority, they do need support of at least one other major party in Parliament in order to stay in power. City News time, 9:03. Ridership on Ottawa bus and O-train service last year was 58% lower than in 2019, pre-pandemic, while the rate of customer injuries resulting from transit operations actually increased. It's two of the several points Transit Commission will be hearing at the meeting on Wednesday this week, discussing OC Transpo's 2020 performance report. It is an achievement that is being hailed as a Wright brothers moment. NASA's $85 million Mars helicopter, called Ingenuity, made the first powered flight on another planet today. It's a 1.8 kilogram size craft carrying a bit of wing fabric from the 2003 Wright Flyer, which made history at Kitty Hawk, North Carolina. To lift off, Ingenuity's twin counter-rotating rotor blades need to spin at 2,500 revolutions a minute, 5 times faster than on Earth, because the atmosphere on Mars is just 1% the thickness of Earth. I'm Andrew Boyle for News Anytime. Follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
Good, bad, or complicated.
There's no news in Ottawa and the Valley he won't talk about.
It's the Rob Snow Show on Rogers TV and City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
I would like to begin this morning by congratulating Ontario Premier Doug Ford. Well done, Mr. Premier. You got another winner of a policy on your hands. Doug Ford managed to artificially create rush hour this morning along one of the main routes of the National Capital Region. Félicitations. We should say it in both official languages, right? Welcome to the Rob Snow Show on City News. Another big day in the news game. A lot of news makers on our show this morning, including the Mayor of Ottawa, Jim Watson. Will talk about the new restrictions now in effect, including the artificially created rush hour, with the Ottawa police doing the roadside, well, whatever it is that they're doing at the roadside. Because a lot of people on social media are saying the Ottawa police aren't doing much of anything at the roadside this morning other than closing down lanes of traffic and then standing on the sidewalk and waving cars through. And for that, traffic for the poor Quebecer coming into Ottawa to work. Traffic is backed up on all the bridges. I believe the last traffic update I heard, traffic is backed up to, let's see, oh yes, Kazabajua. Okay, right, okay. Good stuff, Doug Ford. Great policy. I'm sure that's going to be that's going to be very just what the doctor ordered, right? I don't blame the Ottawa Police. God bless you. Don't get me wrong, and I don't blame the OPP. We're going to have an OPP officer on our show this morning, and I don't blame the SQ. You're just following orders. Okay, doing what you're told by the provincial politicians who, even more than a year into this pandemic, don't seem to have the foggiest idea what they're doing. For example, I see all of these pictures on Twitter this morning from all of these bridges and the morning traffic tie-ups. Old school, rush hour 2019. Hey, remember rush hour? But ask yourself, okay, who are these people? Who are these people coming into Ottawa? 5:30, 6 o'clock in the morning. Where does Doug Ford think these people are going at 6 o'clock in the morning? 7 o'clock in the morning. Who does he think they are? And where does he think they're going? Anyone with any amount of gray matter between the ears would be able to tell you they're going to work. They are essential workers, working in the parts of the economy that Doug Ford hasn't managed to wreck yet. Going to work in the morning in the industries that Premier Ford's government has decided is still essential. Golf, not one of them. Only place in North America, okay? You can't golf. Ontario. Another dandy policy from the bright lights in the Ford government. These people coming across the bridges, they're some of the workers who are actually keeping Ontario open for business. And this is what they're treated to this morning, this stupid policy. That's going to do very little to improve the situation with COVID-19. All it accomplished this morning was to make thousands and thousands and thousands of people late for work. Good job. I mean, does Doug Ford or Francois Legault, for that matter, on the Quebec side, because the SQ is going to be out there too. I mean, do they think these people are going to house parties at 6 o'clock in the morning? They think these people are going to bush parties at 6 o'clock in the morning? Going to a big anti-masker rally? 6 o'clock in the morning? Or is it more likely that they're going to work in essential industries? You know, like our hospitals. Maybe some of them are employees, I don't know, in our long-term care homes. Maybe they're working on Parliament Hill. Maybe they're doing the renovations in the parliamentary precinct. Maybe they're working on our light rail system. Or maybe they're going to work in our grocery stores and our gas stations and our pharmacies. Maybe a few of them are working in our vaccination clinics. Made to sit in a manufactured rush hour this morning because the people at the, let's make no mistake, okay? The people at the very top of the political food chain on both sides of the river want to make it look like they're tough. They're getting tough on COVID-19. Oh, we'll show that we'll get tough on COVID-19. After, well, in Ontario's case, doing precious little for weeks, okay, if not months. When it was all too evident that the third wave was already here. They were opening things up, for crying out loud, 3 weeks ago. All right, there. I got that off my chest. Deep breaths. Okay. Is yoga open, David? Are they allowed to open?
YouTube yoga is open.
YouTube yoga. Yeah. YouTube yoga, YouTube skiing, YouTube golf. How about that third wave? New numbers coming out in about an hour. Is it going to be any better this morning? We'll talk about the situation with the virus, with the pandemic. Talk about the situation in the hospitals, vaccines, with word that people 40 plus can start booking an AstraZeneca shot. That's about the only good news, right, that I heard over the weekend. 40 plus, and you can bet in my house I'm working on that. The sooner I get vaccinated, the better I will feel. Dr. Gerald Evans back on our show this morning, chair of the Division of Infectious Diseases, Queen's University. Oh, and it's federal budget day. Gosh, I almost forgot that governments do budgets when it comes to the Trudeau Liberals. Oh, yeah, budgets. Gee, forgot all of it. So odd, though. You see, usually on my show, just from an editorial standpoint, I would just go all in on the federal budget. I do my whole show on the budget. I would say to David, in fact, this is what I said to David Friday morning. Let's go all in on the federal budget. And then there was the Doug Ford Gong Show Friday afternoon, so we changed course over the weekend. But it's weird. Because of the COVID situation in Ontario, the federal budget, which, remember, is the first federal budget in more than 2 years. It's the first federal budget since the last federal election, and it's not even in the top story. It's not even the lead story. Still a big story, important story. And I mean, I'm old enough to remember when budgets were actually kept under lock and key until 4 o'clock in the afternoon. You didn't know what was in them. You actually had to listen to the news to find out what was in the budget. We already have a pretty good idea what's going to be in this federal budget. Something on childcare. Looks like the Liberals are thinking about moving in the direction of Quebec-style health care. So-called $7 a day childcare system, which hasn't cost $7 a day in a very, very, very long time. Now works on a sliding scale. But it's still very popular in Quebec. I mean, it's so popular in Quebec that if you want a childcare space, it's best to apply before your child is actually born, because that's how long the wait list is for a space. But, you know, will it actually come to pass? The Liberals, in one form or another, have been promising childcare and a childcare plan, nationwide childcare, since before David was born. And that's not even a joke. But maybe they really mean it this time. And according to Bob Fife and Bill Curry from the Parliamentary Bureau of the Globe and Mail this morning, front page story, there's also a plan to spend another $100 billion, because we haven't spent enough, of course. Stimulus. Gotta stimulate the economy. And it's also supposed to be heavy on support for businesses. No problem with that. 4 o'clock this afternoon, first federal budget in more than 2 years. We'll get you ready for it this morning. I'll ask the mayor about what he would like to see in the budget for our city, for municipalities. Former Liberal finance minister, omni-minister, really, when you think back to it from the Chrétien days, John Manley, on our show this morning. He's been doing some work with the C.D. Howe Institute through all of this pandemic. And, politically, is this the budget that's going to send us to the polls? Are we headed to an election? We'll have one of the leaders of the opposition side, federal NDP leader, Jagmeet Singh, back on the program this morning. And the Talkback Hour. Yes, of course. You're in the middle of the Rob Snow Show. Every weekday morning, we encourage your active participation. We do the Talkback Hour every morning between 10 and 11. The call-in line, 750-1310, 750-1310, 613-750-1310. Email, therobsnowshow@ottawa.citynews.ca. And I want to circle back. I think we need to talk about Doug Ford. We need to talk about Doug Ford and his leadership here in Ontario. I mean, it just all seems to be coming apart here in Ontario. This Ontario PC government, I mean, it's given people whiplash. It has given so many people whiplash. I mean, you want to call a personal injury lawyer sometimes. Have Howard Yegendorf on speed dial there. All is not going well, ladies and gentlemen, in Ontario right now on the COVID file. And all of that political capital and all of that goodwill that Doug Ford so successfully banked in the first few months of the pandemic, I mean, where is it now? It's eroding now. You remember the classic picture, Doug Ford showing up, getting the PPEs in the blue jeans. He's throwing them into the back of the F-150. Like, didn't you just love the guy? Well, what have you done for me lately? I mean, how is it that the top trending item for the Washington Post is a David Moskrop column that calls on Doug Ford to resign? And the folks and friends down home charm, the wearing of the heart on the sleeves, the singers and the one-liners starting to wear thin for a lot of people. And what is it with Doug Ford closing down industries that aren't closed anywhere else in North America? He did it to downhill skiing. And now he's doing it with golf. Like nowhere else in all of North America is golf banned. They banned golf. Playgrounds. On Friday, he stands there, tells parents, sorry, you can't take your children to the playground. Too dangerous. By Saturday, playgrounds are fine. Enjoy the playground. Go enjoy the playground. Now playgrounds are okay. Okay, why were they banned yesterday then? He tries to bring karting back. The police are going to be able to pull you over for no good reason at all. Hey, what about probable cause? Forget probable cause. Until just every police force in the province of any significance says, I don't think so. We're not gonna do that. And Sheriff Doug is forced to walk that back too. And then this morning's spectacle. National Capital Region, Ottawa police on the Ottawa side of the bridges artificially creating the return of rush hour. All the while, the situation with COVID gets worse. More cases, more deaths, more people in the hospital, more people in ICU than in any other time. Yeah, I think we should talk about that this morning. Rob Snow Show, Monday morning on City News.
It's such a beautiful feel because it's all natural. I'm able to talk to a lot of people who are going through different journeys of health where they really don't know where to start, where to begin. And I'm happy and grateful to have all this knowledge where I can actually help them and guide them. So, of course, medications have a great place in our system, but even so do natural therapies, which have been around for centuries and centuries. Like, old time, ancient times, everything, herbs grew, everything was done with nature, all healing was done with nature. So I'm totally in love with all the elements with nature. In our beautiful village of Manatik, the Manatik Natural Market, you can find tremendous different things. So we have herbs, we have vitamins, we have natural body care, we do infrared sauna therapy, nutrition counseling, acupuncture, Bowen therapy, energy healing. So we're like a wellness hub along with being a full health food store. We are 1 year into pandemic since it started last year in March. It was a shock. Usually I see things coming, and I definitely did not see that coming. Golden Root is a product that I created 4 years ago, actually for my kids, just for immune system, overall health. And it just took off with certain friends of mine who had cancer or some severe issues, and they started finding that it was really helping them from different tests they had done with their doctor. And I knew I had something really special. So then I went through the proper procedure of being able to sell it. So it's actually, I'm not allowed to make it anymore in my house 4 years ago, and it is made in a Health Canada approved lab, and then it comes to me. And what Golden Root is a formulation of turmeric, ginger, lavender, oregano, and black pepper, all food grade, which is the most bioavailable turmeric in the market right now for pain, inflammation, digestion, immune system, concussion, liver health, and brain health. So, and it tastes like salad dressing. We do a lot of in-house, so we make our in-house concoctions of teas. You can come here, tell us what your health issues are, and we can blend it right there. And there's some that are already prepared beforehand for sleeping, for anxiety, for different things. And in that bar, we basically make cold brew teas and cold brew nitrogen coffee. And again, it's all local. Everything we do is local, and as many herbs we can find locally as well. If a client can't come out, we'll go out of our way to deliver it. And you're getting that personal touch when you come in. If you have an issue, we will listen and help you. We're very, very active in the community, so we would like the same thing back for the community to come to.
designated Ottawa icon.
The Rob Snow Show returns
On Rogers TV and City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Dr. Gerald Evans is chair of the Division of Infectious Diseases at Queen's University. Good morning, doctor. Welcome back to our program.
Good morning, Rob.
Very nice to hear from you. How would you describe the current situation with COVID-19 in Ontario?
Well, it's pretty well, unfortunately, following along the models that have been presented back through February into March with rising case numbers. And I think in particular, we're seeing this very large swing up in hospital admissions and in particular admissions to critical care. So we're still, not yet seeing any effect from what were sort of somewhat limited measures that were brought in earlier this month. And hopefully with new measures coming in that are hopefully going to galvanize people's attention, then maybe that'll help to start getting a plateau in the numbers.
So what's your sense of it? What is more likely? Has it peaked, or is the peak yet to come?
Well, according to what we're seeing right now, it looks like the peak is yet to come. I track the numbers fairly carefully, as do many, many people and many of your listeners, I'm sure. Right now, we're not seeing any good evidence of a downswing. To some extent, some of the numbers that we get each week vary depending on whether it's a weekend or a week, that there may be, an impending plateau. And that's what I look for first, is just this kind of evening out of the numbers and not seeing as dramatic a rise over day to day in case numbers.
In Ottawa here, for example, there are so many data points and so many metrics, I guess, that people could focus on. One of the ones I've been focusing on recently is the so-called R number, because the experts from the earliest days have told me if we're ever going to get a handle on this situation, that R number, reproductive rate of the virus, needs to be below 1. About a week ago, it was at 1.3. Which I have been told is quite alarming, and this is just in Ottawa, now it's down closer to 1. How encouraging is that?
It's always encouraging to see the effective reproduction number down, and that's again a reflection of how many new cases do you produce from every case that exists. So getting it below 1 is, as you point out, very critical, and any sort of drop in that number is incredibly important in sort of determining whether or not we're going to be looking at that plateau, and of course ultimately a downswing in numbers. The only thing that's really challenging about reproduction number is that there are so many variables that go into it, and many different people measure the effective reproductive number based on case counts, and so it's always a bit of a reflection of what happened in the last few days versus what we're seeing, say, for instance, today.
Okay. Now, here's something that I saw on Twitter, okay? Hate to use Twitter as a source, but nevertheless. Some doctors on Twitter keep tweeting, it's airborne, it's an aerosol, it's airborne. Can you tell us what that means? COVID-19 is airborne, what the implications are of that and our understanding of this virus?
Well, part of the problem that we're seeing is that people equate aerosols with an airborne virus, and there are so many things that go into the concept of being an airborne virus, which relates to, really, in my mind, as an infectious disease doctor, transmission by aerosols, tiny particles at a long distance that may persist in an enclosed environment for a long period of time. And what we know for sure about COVID-19 is that short-range aerosols, those aerosols that are very close to a person who's infected, make a significant contribution to transmission, as do, of course, large droplets, which is part and parcel of what we've already said. What we know is fomite transmission by contaminated surfaces, actually contributes a very minor amount of transmission. So there's no question that aerosols are important. The issue has to do with how you define airborne, and what we're seeing is...
Do we know that yet? Do we know that yet with this virus, though?
What airborne or aerosols are clearly important. Airborne, which as an infectious disease doctor believes is represented by a disease like measles, for instance. The fact is a very small amount of virus, long distance and tiny particles can transmit it. And we have not seen effectively that airborne, I'll put it in air quotes as I'm sitting here talking to you, is not really a thing. But aerosols are clearly important. And aerosols oftentimes are interchanged as saying airborne, depending on how people define it. And we have scientists who work on this, physicists, chemists, and engineers, and they tend to believe anything that's aerosol is airborne, where I think myself as an infectious disease doctor views airborne as a very specific form of aerosol that's at a long distance and remains suspended in the air for a long period of time with a virus that has a very tiny amount of virus that needs to produce infection. And we're not seeing the same thing with COVID-19 that we see with measles, for instance.
Okay. Because, for example, I come into work every day and I sit in this little area here and I wipe everything down with a disinfectant wipe. I wipe off the screen and the keyboard and the microphone and everything. But I just wonder if I then leave this area and I go into, say, the men's room and somebody has sneezed in there, what's more risky?
It's a great question because it's full of all kinds of variables.
Right.
There's no question that being close to someone who's infected poses a greater risk. So that close proximity to someone, and in the case, the hypothetical you're putting, this person who sneezed has COVID-19, then that's certainly clearly more of a risk than you're going to get it from an inanimate surface that perhaps has been touched by someone who has the virus. And that's because the virus doesn't really last for a long time on inanimate surfaces like a keyboard or a desk, for instance. So in those two scenarios, yes, your proximity in a washroom to someone who perhaps is infected and is sneezing or coughing poses a greater risk than transmission from your keyboard, for instance.
Okay. What do you think about the decision to lower the eligibility for the AstraZeneca vaccine in Ontario to people 40 years of age and older?
Absolutely brilliant decision. We should have done that earlier, but again, people were being very, very cautious. This is really important, and we've got to get vaccine into people. Our way, one of the many ways, but probably the critical pathway out of the pandemic at the moment, is vaccinating people. The AstraZeneca vaccine works. The data from England, where almost half of the vaccine that's been given out is AstraZeneca, is very, very impressive, and your listeners may have heard about the fact that England now has a plan to sort of emerge itself out of the lockdowns and things that they're currently in. So vaccinating is really, really important. And I think people need to understand that if you're older than 40, the risk equation you're looking at is likely one of these incidents of blood clots as being maybe at the most 1 in a million. And, dying from COVID or getting hospitalized with COVID is extraordinarily higher than that.
Okay. Doctor, how dangerous are outdoor activities? Golfing, going to playgrounds, these sorts of things that have been in the news over the weekend.
Yeah, that was a real misstep by the government suggesting we should close playgrounds. Outside is remarkably safer than indoors, no question about it. There was a very large, what we call meta-analysis or systematic review done of that showed that probably the risk of getting infected outdoors is at least 18 times less than it is indoors. So activities outdoors are safer. They're not completely safe, but they're definitely safer than any kind of activity you can do indoors.
Thank you, Dr. Evans. Nice to hear from you this morning.
Thanks, Rob.
Yeah, from Queen's University, Dr. Gerald Evans. The news next, and then Ottawa Mayor Jim Watson.
Number 1 for local news in Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News, now on 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
It's Monday, April 19th. Good morning. I'm Andrew Boyle. Right now in Ottawa and in Smiths Falls, 9 degrees, and here's what's making news this hour. Rush hour returned to our region this morning as police checked the reason for those crossing into Ontario from Quebec. Essential travel only, according to the latest decree from the province. A resulting check at the bridges and the ferries may for an extra long lineup for those attempting to cross into Ontario. It is a major move toward mass immunization, with those 40 and older now able to book their COVID vaccine from AstraZeneca starting tomorrow. The health minister confirming last night the expanded role for that vaccine, and it will play that. Many are apparently, though, vaccine shopping to try and avoid the AstraZeneca shot. NDP says the province has proposed shutting down the legislature starting on Wednesday in an effort to stifle criticism about the pandemic response from the government. But the PCs insist they're merely trying to find ways to keep government staffers safe during COVID-19. They say regardless, the legislature is going to be in session today. City News Time, 9:32. I'm Andrew Boyle. For news anytime, follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
Strong voice.
Strong opinions.
The Rob Snow Show returns on Rogers TV and City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Good morning to Ottawa Mayor Jim Watson. Good morning, Mr. Mayor.
Good morning, Rob. I hear you have a strong opinion on border crossings.
I would like to know your opinion on border crossings. I've already shared mine, Mr. Mayor. I think it's an artificially created rush hour that will do very little to solve our current crisis.
Well, I was cheering you on from the sidelines here. I think it's an absolutely ridiculous idea that has not been thought out. That is going to cost us hundreds of thousands of dollars because you have 5 bridge crossings, 2 ferry crossings, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And there are so many reasons why you don't have to prove that you're coming over to Ontario because you work here, or goods and services, medical reasons, compassionate reasons, and so on. And it's really frustrating for our police service. So, as you said, don't take it out on the Ottawa Police. This is them doing their job as directed by the Provincial Solicitor General. And as I said, there was no consultation on this whatsoever by municipalities or chiefs of police. We hear about it after it's announced by the Premier. And we could have told them that, closing or trying to put these checkpoints on borders in Ottawa, it makes absolutely no sense whatsoever. We're one economy. People work over in Gatineau and live in Ottawa and vice versa. And we have thousands of healthcare workers that are across the border, other essential workers, as you pointed out, people that work in grocery stores and drugstores and so on. We're really one integrated economy. And there was no evidence whatsoever brought forward that shows that this kind of a checkpoint system actually halts the spread of COVID-19. That was proven last year when the Sûreté de Québec did it on the Quebec side. And I argued back then I would never want to see it on this side. And unfortunately, the province has overruled us.
You had no choice.
No, without breaking provincial regulations. So, the chief has now had to spend the last 72 hours scrambling with his officers to get them assigned, get our traffic people out there with all sorts of traffic cones and signs and so on. And, my Twitter feed is blowing up where people are saying it when normally would take them 20 minutes is taking an hour. There's a 10-kilometer lineup on the Quebec side.
It's great for greenhouse gases, too, Mr. Mayor.
I know. It was really not thought out. And this is another example, unfortunately, we saw with the parks, we saw with the random stops for police. The things they're coming out with often just don't make any sense because they haven't reached out beyond their own, the steeple or tower to ask those people who are going to have to live with these decisions. Telling kids they can't go on play structures and teeter-totters just doesn't make any sense.
Okay.
And you had a doctor on just a moment ago, yes. Rob, who said the best place for people to be is outdoors because that's where the spread is
with the appropriate precautions in place.
Yeah. We tell people that even though it's not a regulation, we encourage kids, if they're going to use play equipment with other kids outside of their household, to wear a mask. And they're doing that already in schools. The schools require at recess the kids wear their masks. Well, they have to wear their masks all the time, but also also at recess as well.
Now, that being said, I mean, I did see on Twitter that the Ottawa police were out in parks and this sort of thing. And I know last week a big issue was curfews in parks and whether we should have curfews. What is your current approach to enforcement to make sure that people are abiding by our own local regulations here in the Ottawa area, Mr. Mayor?
Well, it's go after the big problems, you know, the parties, the beer bottles that are smashed at Vincent Massey Park, as we saw a week ago, or at Mooney's Bay, where 25 people hanging around an illegal bonfire. Those are the things that we have to shut down because they are super spreader events, not some kids, you know, going on a swing set at a community park. So by law are going to step up enforcement on those. There's about a dozen parks where there's traditionally problems with lots of people gathering, having tailgate parties in the parking lot at Mooney's Bay and so on. Those things have to stop, and I think most reasonable people recognize that they're in the midst of a pandemic. That is something stupid that you shouldn't be doing. So focus on those kinds of issues, drinking, you know, in intoxication and so on, and let the kids, let the kids be kids, because you know, to the credit of the Premier, he backtracked and listened, and same with the random checks, backtracked on that. Now we have this situation, as you pointed out, there's, you know, I think we're the only jurisdiction that doesn't allow golf in tennis. These are sort of sports that are, you stay far enough away from everyone. You know, I know when I'm golfing, I'm never near any of my golf partners because I'm such a bad golfer.
Yeah, you're in the woods anyway. You're like me. You're in the woods anyway, right?
Yeah, so I think they have to, you know, they have to rethink these things. And, you know, we even had a call, the big city mayors of Ontario had a call on Friday with the Minister of Municipal Affairs. Weren't given any kind of a heads up as to what the Premier was going to announce. And had we been given that notification, we could explain to him the problems with putting these checkpoints on the bridges and the ferries. And secondly, we're expecting, because we're taking note of every cost, we're going to send the bill to the province because, you know, the OPP should be doing this, not Ottawa Police. They're stretched as it is, and they have other priorities throughout the city.
Okay, so you expect, let me just jump in here. You expect the provincial government to cover any costs associated with the policing that we saw, for example, this morning here in Ottawa?
Absolutely. This is, you know, the chief told me there's between 50 and 100 officers that they require. And I know, you know, one person told me there were 20 police officers on this one bridge. I can't remember which bridge it was. So you multiply that by 5 bridge crossings, 2 ferry crossings, 7 days a week, 24 hours a day. You're into the hundreds of thousands of dollars, not to even think about, you know, the gas that the police officers' cars have to keep running to keep their computer systems running and their lights going. You know, it just really was not well thought out whatsoever, and there's such a public backlash. I'm hoping that the Premier says, you know what, we'll listen to the local people in the Ottawa area and stop this.
Okay. Look, at any other time, I would interview you, Mayor Watson, and ask you, Mr. Mayor, it's federal budget day. What's on your wish list? So it is federal budget day. What's on your wish list?
Well, you know, it's pretty consistent, Rob. The big city mayors of Canada put in a budget proposal, a pre-budget proposal, to continue the record investments on affordable housing, because as you know, we've got anywhere between 10 and 13,000 people on a wait list for affordable housing. A continuation of their funding for transit. We've got phase 2 of LRT lined up, which is great. We want to start the discussions this year on phase 3, which would go to the highest growth areas of our city, Stittsville, Canada, and Barhaven. General infrastructure, you know, roads and bridges and so on. And of course, childcare has a direct implication, particularly in the midst of a pandemic where women have been, adversely affected because of the need to stay home with children. If we have a better, more affordable childcare system that allows more women in particular to get back to the workforce quicker, because, you know, the biggest issue that we have facing us aside from the health pandemic is, of course, the economic crisis that we're in. We have the lowest unemployment rate of the 7 biggest cities in Canada, which is good, but it's still over 6%. And we view these investments, particularly infrastructure and housing, as great job creators to get people back to work.
Okay. Thank you for your time this morning, Jim Watson.
My pleasure.
Stay well, sir. Bye-bye.
Thank you. You too.
Yeah. Ottawa Mayor Jim Watson, not impressed with the traffic situation in the National Capital Region. this morning. Are we ready with our next guest? Yes. Okay. So let's just get right into the policing situation, not from the viewpoint of the Ottawa Police, but rather the Ontario Provincial Police. Bill Dickson, OPP East Region, joins me now. Good morning.
Good morning, Rob.
Very nice to hear from you, sir. It's 20 to 10 here. For all intents and purposes, rush hour is effectively over, except for maybe the late stragglers on the Quebec bridges right now. But how did things go this morning? What are you hearing?
I just walked out of our command and control center at the regional headquarters and found out just basically what it's looked like. Because of course, we're a little unique. I mean, yes, Ottawa, the city, has tons and tons of traffic that does travel across the bridges every day. But as part of our jurisdiction with the OPP, we have Highway 401. Which is, as everybody talks about, being the busiest highway in the country. Mm-hmm. So, yes, we are seeing a lot of traffic on the highway. Are we seeing slowdowns and backups? Yes, we are trying to keep it manageable. We're asking everyone to be patient and definitely slow down as they approach the border. I don't have the total number right now of the number of vehicles that we have stopped, but I know we have turned back a handful of vehicles after determining that it was non-essential travel.
And how would you determine that? What would go into that decision-making process to turn somebody around?
I'll run through what we're doing. We're slowing everything down as it approaches the border, or the interprovincial boundary. Border is probably not the right term. We slow everyone down. Commercial vehicles, transport trucks, are sent on their way. We're not stopping them at all. Everyone else comes into the checkpoint. If you have an Ontario plate, we wave you on. We'll smile and wave and send you on your way. Anyone with an out-of-province plate, we will stop and have a chat and ask them about their purposes. And there is a very lengthy list of exemptions to the restrictions on interprovincial travel. And we basically just we talk to the people about why they're there and compare it to the list of the exemptions. And I mean, we know people have so much going on. I mean, it's everything from, we have so many people who live on one side of the provincial boundary and work on the other. We know there's a lot of that. We know there's a lot of travel across the boundary for health reasons. People may have their doctor or may have other types of medical appointments on the opposite side. Child care, custody. You might have one parent who lives on one side and the other. So
I know somebody in that circumstance, actually. Yes.
So, I mean, we know there are a lot of valid reasons. So we want to make sure that we talk to people. And of course, discretion and common sense also play a big role here.
Okay. What precautions are your members taking to protect themselves? And as a motorist, what precautions would you expect from me as a motorist?
Well, first and foremost...
should I wear a mask, for example? When
absolutely. I would recommend that. First and foremost, we're concerned about traffic safety because here we are, we're on in the case of the 401, 417, and even the secondary roads, we want to make sure people stay safe. So don't get out of your car if you're stopped in traffic on a highway. Our members are cognizant and aware that public safety and officer safety is huge when it comes to any time you're stopping traffic on a highway. That's the big thing. In terms of the COVID situation, our members will be wearing all of the necessary PPE, which imagine, not that long ago, PPE wasn't part of our dialogue, but now it's just rolls off the tongue. Our members will be wearing, eyewear. They will be wearing their masks. And while we can't force someone in their car as they approach the checkpoint to wear their PPE, perhaps we would suggest that it might be a respectful thing to do, and just for their own safety and for the safety of our members, same as if you go through a drive-through. If you're going through a drive-through, you don't have to wear the mask when you drive up to that window to get your coffee, but it's a nice, respectful thing to do for the staff that work behind the window.
Okay. Here is one of the fears that some people have, that this could potentially be a big fishing expedition. That, okay, you're funneling all of this traffic through a police checkpoint on either on some, as you say, some of the busiest highways, the 400 series highways, some of the biggest, busiest highways in Canada, 416, 401, all those 400 series highways. Are you running license plate? Are you looking for outstanding warrants? Are you asking for identification? Are you looking for possible safety violations on a vehicle. If you know, give me a sense of that, sir.
I mean, in a quick answer, no, we're not. I mean, we don't have time to look that far beyond the stop itself, because we know that traffic is going to get backed up, and we don't want to make people wait unnecessarily. So are we going to go out of our way to look for something? No. If an officer sees open liquor inside a vehicle,
sure,
or worst case scenario, you see a handgun sitting on the seat, well, yes, the officers are definitely not going to turn a blind eye to that. They will take any action necessary.
Okay.
But will we be, you know, we're not asking people for ID. We're not running people. We're not running license plates. We're merely stopping people, asking for their reasons for traveling to Ontario, comparing that with what we know are the provided exemptions from the government. And if they are giving us one of the reasons that is on that exemption list, then we send them on their way with a smile and a wave and have a nice day.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean, if someone is blatantly doing something illegal, then we would have to take action as we deem appropriate.
What is the current protocol right now with Service Ontario hard to access? What is the current protocol with expired plates right now?
Well, expired plates, they since 1st of March 2020, anything that was due to expire from that point on, it has been extended. I haven't seen any change from Service Ontario. So, I mean, I'm driving my personal vehicle. One of them hasn't expired yet, but the other one expired in November of last year. So I mean, everything has been extended. But if anybody has any questions regarding because you will have to, from what I've read, have to pay eventually.
Yes.
You can check with the Service Ontario website. I know you can order the new stickers online, but in terms of what they're doing, in terms of in person at their locations, I'm not entirely sure. But I mean, I'm sure if you call or check the Service Ontario website, they would be more than happy to provide an answer for that.
And again, Bill Dickson, this is 24/7. This is 24/7.
24/7 for some of the major checkpoints or for some of the major highways. Some of the others, we're doing it on a rotational basis because there are just so many little roadways that run between them. I mean, our provinces, they share a water border in many cases, with the Ottawa River being a boundary for most of it in this part of the province. Other places, there might be small roadways. In Hawkesbury, it's a bridge on John Street, which is bidirectional traffic.
Yeah.
We are there 24/7. Some places we won't be 24/7. And we know that some people will think, I know that they're not on that bridge today. I'm going there. We might not be there right now, but we might be there tomorrow, or we might be there this afternoon. We have the resources we need in place to do these checkpoints, but we also know that we need to make sure we keep the resources in the communities we service and provide the people of Ontario the service they deserve in terms of protecting them, protecting their communities from crime beyond everything else that's going on today.
Thank you, Bill Dickson from the OPP. Nice to hear from you, sir.
Thank you, Rob.
Yep. All the best to everybody at the OPP. Okay, John Manley standing by. We'll talk about the federal budget. Yes, it's federal budget day, 4 o'clock this afternoon. All sorts of coverage, of course, all day here on City News.
Part of the reason I got back into this is because I am creative, and I also wanted to kind of have a fun flair, 50s vibe. All of the boxes are kind of fun names, the colors are fun, the logo is fun, and it's not just the package that I want to bring joy to people's lives, it's also the feeling that they get when they receive it, to know that there's someone that thinks of them and they're missing them and showing that they care when they can't be there. The smallest of the subscription boxes is the red box, the classical box. So you would get 5 to 7 items from the variety of categories. Those do change quarterly. However, with items that are more popular, we'll bring them back as people ask for them, or you could get them as an add-on option. And then those items will be included in the Jazzy box, the same items from the first, although they'll be in a larger size, more quantity, as well as a couple extra items. And then in the largest box, the Doo-Wop Deluxe, which is our most popular, that is a comprehensive offering of all of the other 2 boxes, plus additional. So for example, if you were to get a certain item in the smallest of the boxes, that item would still be offered in the large, but in in a bigger size. So you're getting everything bigger plus an extra few items. The first thing is I look for Canadian suppliers and manufacturers. That is something I'm very proud of. I make sure that the products are safe, that they fit into the packages that we offer, obviously. They have to be the proper size and weight. I have approximately 300 items that we have so far that we can order that basically help make people's lives easier. There's snacks, there's self-care items, there's entertainment, a little bit of everything. And basically I try it and test it, and if it's duly approved, then I include it in our packages. So some of the categories that we have is we offer treats, which is of course everyone likes treats, no matter how old you are. So we have things like nuts, chocolates, different types of snacks, maybe a handmade piece of jewelry. We also include pieces of jewelry as well, occasionally. We also have our Pamper Items. So your Pamper Items would include things like your bath soaks, your specialty lotions, things like that. Two other categories we offer are leisure. Leisure would include things such as puzzles, adult coloring books, paint by numbers, crosswords, word find, Sudoku, if that's how you say it. And we also have items for self-care and health. So masks, sanitizers, sanitizing wipes. They're all natural, non-drying, made with natural ingredients. So they're very good for everyone, especially in this time that we're dealing with.
The world is changing.
So keep up with Rob.
The Rob Snow Show returns on Rogers TV and City News, 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
It's federal budget day, first budget in more than 2 years, first since the last election, as a matter of fact. What to expect. John Manley, former federal finance minister, co-chair of the C.D. Howe Institute Fiscal and Tax Working Group, is with me this morning on City News. Good morning, Mr. Manley.
Good morning, Rob.
So there's what you would like to see, and then there's what we're going to see. What do you think we're going to see?
Well, I think we're going to see lots of spending. And we've already had a few leaks around what some of that will look like. We know that President Biden is hosting an Earth Day summit shortly, and the government's going to want to put its best foot forward attending that. So expect lots of green-colored spending. It won't be red ink, it'll be green ink, and it'll probably touch on a lot of infrastructure ideas that can be loosely linked to the war against climate change. Also expect that you'll see continued spending to offset some of the effects of COVID-19. There are sectors of the economy that are still, of course, on their backs. There are some that are doing fine, but there are others that are not recovering yet, and they'll need to continue to spend there. And we've got the promise of child care spending that could come. Hard to say what exactly that will look like, but expect to see it in the budget.
Okay. How do you view that? This is not the first government to go down this road, of course. Your former colleague, Mr. Dryden, tried to go down this road. I had a top economist on, for example, from CIBC World Markets last week, Benjamin Tal, who said, Rob, don't look at it, childcare, as a social policy. Look at it as an economic policy. Look at it as something that gets more people into the workforce. Is that how you view it, Mr. Manley?
In part, I do. Okay. I think the tricky thing here, and it's something that, we've been trying to get a child care policy in place for a long, long time. It was in the Red Book in the 1993 election, which I ran in. And what we ran into was the Constitution, because it's largely provincial jurisdiction. So how you go about doing it and what you exactly do, I think, is the key thing. So, everybody looks to the Quebec model, which is a carefully formulated model. It gives people access at a price that may or may not reflect actual costs. And that seems like a particularly rigid way to go about it. So I think if the federal government says we need to put money into families so that they can afford daycare, that's probably a good outcome. But do it by giving them the money so that they can find their own daycare solutions that suit the needs of their particular families, rather than trying to prescribe from Ottawa how it will be delivered at the provincial level. That's for the provinces to do.
Okay. How much do you want to see things like guidelines or guardrails or whatever the case might, fiscal anchors, all these terms that we're hearing, Mr. Manley?
Well, I'd like to see it, because I think that we're going to get a recovery, because we know, and Benjamin Tal may have said this to you, that we know that households have accumulated a lot of cash, and businesses have accumulated a lot of cash. So getting an economic recovery in macro terms is going to be pretty easy to do, because there's a lot of pent-up demand and a lot of savings that have been amassed. The question is, do you want a recovery that's just driven by consumption, or do you want a recovery that's driven by investment? And if you want one that lasts, you want one that's driven by investment. That requires that the government take the steps that are necessary to inspire business confidence. The cheapest form of stimulus you'll find doesn't cost $100 billion. It costs you the ability to just keep spending without restraint, because businesses are not going to invest if government is taking up all of that slack. So when I hear words like, industrial policy, or we don't really need to worry about it because interest rates are low, I think that scares investment away.
Okay.
And I think that that's going to be an unfortunate outcome if we don't use this as a chance to change the trends that we're already setting in about investment flowing into Canada.
Thank you, John Manley, for your insight this morning.
My pleasure, Rob. Take care.
You too. John Manley, former federal finance minister. I call him the Omni Minister. He had so many portfolios in the Chrétien government. C.D. Howe Institute Fiscal and Tax Working Group. News coming up, and then the Talkback Hour. Look, it was a wild and crazy weekend in Ontario. It's not over yet. We had the spectacle of all this traffic on the bridges coming in from the Quebec side this morning, what I called an artificial rush hour. I want your take on it all during the Talkback Hour. 750-1310. Grab a line. Rob Snow Show, City News.
news in Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News, now on 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
It's Monday, April 19th. Good morning. I'm Andrew Boyle. Right now in Ottawa and in Smiths Falls, 9 degrees. Here's what's making news in Ottawa and the Valley. Latest numbers on COVID cases in the province just coming in. We'll have them for you in a moment. But first, interprovincial police checkpoints are now in place on the Ontario side with 5 bridges and 2 ferry terminals connecting Ottawa and Gatineau. Now, Mayor Jim Watson of Ottawa not happy about the move. Watson feels the decision to implement the checkpoints is ridiculous and not well thought out. He tells the Rob Snow Show the financial impact the checkpoints are going to have.
The chief told me there's between 50 and 100 officers that they require. And I know, one person told me there were 20 police officers on this one bridge. I can't remember which bridge it was. So you multiply that by 5 bridge crossings, 2 ferry crossings, 7 days a week, 24 hours a day. You're into the hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Now, the mayor adds the city will send the bill to the province since he feels the OPP should be in charge of checkpoints and not Ottawa Police, which is already stretched. Now, those new COVID case numbers for Ontario just coming out this morning, 4,447 new cases today, along with 19 more deaths. The numbers come from just under 43,000 tests, and the positivity rate there is at 10.5%. 233 of these new cases are in Ottawa, 32 more in Eastern Ontario, 12 in Leeds, Grenville, Lanark, 11 new cases today in Renfrew. City News Time, 10:03. Now your forecast with meteorologist Jill Taylor.
We are heading into quite a weather week. We've got mixed conditions, a slight chance of some showers today, but some clearing too. The high 17 degrees, the wind out of the southwest. Tonight, mainly clear through the evening, chance of showers overnight near 5, and tomorrow mainly cloudy, the high near 8. For today, the high 17.
And right now, 9 degrees in both Ottawa and in Smiths Falls. Some great news concerning vaccines against COVID-19, as now people under the age of 40 in the province of Ontario will be able to register for an AstraZeneca vaccine starting tomorrow. It is an achievement being hailed as a Wright brothers moment. NASA's $85 million Mars helicopter called Ingenuity made its first powered flight on another planet today. More from reporter Jim Ryan.
It took 4 hours for the picture to reach the California NASA facility, where members of the team that designed and built the small twin-rotor remote-controlled helicopter watched a monitor. Engineer Taryn Bailey.
The image we're looking at on the screen is the image from our onboard navigation camera showing us hovering above the surface of Mars. How incredible!
The 1.8-kilogram craft carried a bit of wing fabric from the 1903 Wright Flyer, which made history at Kitty Hawk, North Carolina. If you're looking to add a furry friend to your family, the Ontario OSPCA is looking for volunteers to foster vulnerable animals. It's National Volunteer Week. For more information, you can visit ontariospca.ca/foster. I'm Andrew Boyle, and for news anytime, follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
Talk back.
Hello. On the Rob Snow Show. The phone lines are open at 613-750-1310.
Now, the Rob Snow Show continues.
What do you think about where we are right now in Ontario when it comes to COVID-19? Let's start right there. And what do you think about the job that Doug Ford is doing right now? 750-1310. Let's throw that into the mix, too. 750-1310, 613-750-1310. That's our phone number. Email address, Rob Snow Show, The Rob Snow Show at ottawa.citynews.ca. I mean, there is some good news on the vaccine front, okay? People 40 years and up getting a dose of AstraZeneca, that's allowed at a pharmacy. Believe me, looking into that right now. But as far as good news goes, boy, it's hard to come by. The whole situation, I mean, it's exhausting, isn't it? It's frustrating. It's maddening. Just being honest with you, it's kind of how I feel this morning, that and then some. But we are where we are. It is what it is. So I want to know what you think about where we are and what it is with the pandemic in Ontario, and how you think Doug Ford is handling the situation. Does he appear to be a premier who's on top of the job? on top of things, has a command of the file. 750-1310, 750-1310, 613-750-1310. I mean, I don't think I've ever been through a weekend of news like we just had this past weekend in Ontario. It's pretty crazy. All of it breaking Friday afternoon. Why can't they do this Friday morning when I'm doing my radio show? Why do I have to wait till Friday afternoon? And then there's what broke Friday afternoon, and then there's how it evolved over the weekend. I mean, really, it's hard to come up with anything that quite compares to it. And a lot of times, I'm willing to give the Ford government some of the benefit of the doubt. Okay? Through a lot of this, I've been, and this comes, not just with the Ford government, but with government. A lot of what government is trying to do, I know it's done with the best of intentions, okay? But with these latest moves from Doug Ford's government, boy, it's just amazing to witness how so much of what it is doing seems to be missing the mark. Closing golf courses, closing playgrounds, and then being forced into backtracking when it comes to closing playgrounds. Bringing back what amounts to karting, only to face a revolt. I mean, a revolt from just about every significant police force in the province on that. Just one by one coming out on Saturday. No, we're not going to do that. Mr. Premier, we are not going that far. We are going to defy you. We are going to defy what the government says. We're not going to do that. Take that, Doug Ford. I mean, that's incredible in and of itself, don't you? The government says, go do this, and the police say, yeah, we're not doing that. Like, this isn't Myanmar, is it? Like, it's crazy. It's crazy, some of this stuff. Just incredible. I mean, the government, this is the government. It refused to impose a curfew, right? Quebec-style curfew, all well and good, but it ends up putting police on bridges during the morning rush hour just to pester essential workers that are just, they're just trying to get to work. They're not going to house parties at 5:30 in the morning, 6 o'clock in the morning. They're trying to go to work, maybe in a hospital, maybe in a long-term care home. They might be one of the frontline heroes that Doug Ford likes to talk about so often. What is that? What is a policy like we saw this morning with rush hour traffic in the National Capital Region? What does that have to do with stopping private gatherings, stopping private get-togethers, stopping people from getting together when and where they shouldn't be getting together, right? I mean, who do they think these people are that are coming across the bridges every morning from the Quebec side? They're people who are working in industries that Doug Ford hasn't decided to destroy yet. People working in grocery stores and gas stations and fulfillment centers. They're doing a booming business. Long-term care, hospitals, right? And all the while, the virus rampages on. 4,447 is today's number. Is Doug Ford a man out of ideas, leading a government with no answers left? And this spectacle, Mr. Trudeau playing white knight, riding to Doug Ford's rescue. That must please Liberals very much with a federal budget today, a federal election call very much in play in battleground Ontario, as important as ever in determining the outcome of that election. To me, it all seems to be coming undone, ladies and gentlemen, in Ontario. And if I wasn't so willing to give so many the benefit of the doubt, I may just go so far as to say it's an indictment of leadership. 11 minutes after 10 o'clock, this is the Talkback Hour on the Rob Snow Show. I've had my say twice now because it's like my show. But let's hear from you. Okay, one line available there. You should grab it. Alta Vista. Andrew, good morning, Andrew.
Yeah, hi, Rob.
Hi,
How
Andrew.
can anybody possibly agree with a guy that's got the most restrictive lockdown measures in North America? Like, he's destroying businesses, absolutely destroying businesses. I have a son living in Over-in-Elmer. He just picked up a house. I was giving him a hand on the weekend, and I left Sunday, and it didn't occur to me until I was home. I was like, damn, I'm not going to see him for 5 weeks. And he just got a house and needs help over there. And I'm like, what in God's name? That. And quick 2 points that I was listening to John Manley, and I just wanted to say that going forward, businesses are done. Like, who in their right mind would get into a small business after this, knowing that the government can willy-nilly shut them down for weeks on end, A, and B, what bank is going to lend to a small business going forward? It's not going to happen. Small businesses in this country are finished if they're not going to be finished after 5 weeks. And unless there's a constitutional amendment saying the governments can never do this again, no one's going to open up a business. I certainly wouldn't open up a business. I work for myself. I'm lucky. I'm doing a lot of water infiltration work, so I'm allowed to keep working. I work alone. But it's brutal. It's absolutely brutal.
Yeah, you do have to wonder sometimes, 6 weeks of this, what's going to be left to save?
Nothing.
They say we got to, support the economy, What's going to be left to support after all of this?
I know a guy down on the market who started a business down there probably about 3-4 years ago. He finally built it up, was doing great. He said, this is probably about 3 weeks ago, he's got a month, and that's it. He's done.
Yeah.
Now, these businesses are not coming back. People got to get that through their heads. These businesses are not coming back, and small businesses opening up in the future, not going to happen, because the banks would be out of their mind to lend money to a small business, knowing that the government can just shut them down whenever they feel like it. So they've effectively, congratulations, Doug Ford, Trudeau's peon there, for crushing small businesses in the province of Ontario, and good on you for doing it, because he's, as far as I'm concerned, he's a liberal, like Aaron O'Toole.
Okay. You feel betrayed. Okay.
Get in next time, yeah.
Thank you, Andrew. Thank you, sir. Okay, 750-1310, 750-1310. This is the Talkback Hour on the Rob Snow Show. We set this hour aside for you. Prescott, Matt, you're on City News. Good morning, Matt.
Good morning, Rob.
Yeah, what do you think about the situation in Ontario today?
Well, I was thinking about it on the weekend after hearing everything that was going on, all these rules being announced and then retracted, and I know people who are from one end of the spectrum to the other with, okay, we got to stay locked down real tight, never see anyone, and I got other people who are like, think the vaccine is a government chip that they're going to put into you, right?
Sure, yeah.
Both ends of the spectrum.
Yeah.
And, on that crazy side of the spectrum, you got people who are saying, I don't care what the government says, I'm going to do whatever I want. And it's a bit of a scary situation because, with the laws where the cops could stop people and charge them, and the cops saying no, nothing's going to get done, and we're going to get to what are they expecting our case count in the summer, 18,000 cases a day or something like that by summer if nothing changes.
If nothing is done, they said, yeah.
If nothing is done, right?
Yeah.
So, and you get these people who really aren't. I know people who aren't staying home. They're still seeing people even with this lockdown. So either we're going to get some crazy numbers with COVID, or the government's going to step in and put in do something, announce something to try to keep people home, and the people are just going to riot. They're going to say, no way, man. It's a bit of a tricky spot to be in. It sucks.
All right, thank you, Matt. Thank you. Safe travels. Sounds like he's on the road there in Prescott. This is the Talkback Hour on the Rob Snow Show. 1 quarter in the books. Take part. Encourage your calls at 750-1310. 750-1310. This is the Rob Snow Show on City News.
We just took over this business about a few weeks prior to the pandemic, but we've been loving the community, the people, very friendly, but it's been very difficult starting up a new business, just the time that we did. but I'm sure it's the same everywhere. We did take a broken business, which doesn't help us, but we thought we believe in what we do. We're very passionate about food, and we just really wanted to share the Iraqi culture through our food. All our recipes are homemade, so this is very unique. Usually you hear restaurants, shops, it's all frozen food or prepared food. So nothing here is prepared, everything is homemade. We get our meat and produce from a local farm. So supporting local is the way to go. We are supporting all the way. And our meat are actually marinated the day of, so it's as fresh as can be. Quality ingredients and everything is made from scratch. I get a lot of people when they come in, they say it tastes like Middle Eastern, like back home. So for you to have been to Iraq and had the food there, you can really compare and see the similarity. We do like to focus on healthy. So our recipes, not only the homemade, again, everything is from scratch, but we have from combos and to small sandwiches. One of our favorites and very popular is the chicken salad and the beef salad. So now you're getting all the protein and all these amazing ingredients that we all need. During this time, I find a lot of people are sitting at home and not enough movement. So to come here and get something healthy other than go elsewhere and just put, what's not so good for our bodies, makes a huge difference. So we have shawarma sandwiches, combos. I mean, if you're looking for a meal to feed your family, I would highly recommend the family platter. It comes literally with everything, with potatoes, with rice, with chicken, with beef, and we don't charge extra for mix. I know a lot of places do. Here we just add everything to your platter. And lots of healthy choices for sure. We're very passionate about food, and for our small family business, it's been good. Like I said, it's a little struggle, but we are not a chained restaurant.
On the Rob Snow Show.
Have your say and call now.
613-750-1310.
Yeah, I'm getting heck for being too tough on Doug Ford. Don't worry, I am an equal opportunity critic, okay? Just because I'm a right-of-center guy doesn't mean I won't go after conservatives when conservatives do stupid things. I wish I could be charitable, I really do. But look, it's been 13 months of this, okay? And now, I mean, look at where we are. 4,400 cases today. I mean, 4,000 cases has become the norm. Nationwide, Global News says overall cases up 43% in 14 days. 43% increase in 14 days. The number of people dying every day up 40% in the last 14 days. Meantime, in the United States, the number of daily deaths is down in the last 14 days, down 8%. The number of cases are up just 5%. See, it's like, we should change this from the Rob Snow Show to the Marty McFly Show, because it's like we've just hopped into the DeLorean and we're not really in April of 2021. We're actually in April of 2020. Okay, we're right back to where we started. People begged Premier Ford to do more, to limit the spread of the virus, impose more restrictions, get tough, take it more seriously. They pleaded with him for weeks and weeks and weeks to do something to get a handle on the situation. He finally pulled the trigger on some big moves. He faces this torrent of backlash. Parents, police chiefs, me, and, the folksy charm and the friends and the folks and the friends and the folks. I don't think that's going very far. He's not getting any mileage out of that. Whatever political capital he had built up, he's lost it since Friday afternoon. I mean, he has seasoned reporters with decades of experience telling cable news networks over the weekend they'd never seen such a debacle of a news conference, the likes of which transpired on Friday. Number one trending post, Washington Post. Column by David Moscroft. weekly contributor to the Mark Sutcliffe Show here on City News, saying Doug Ford should resign. That's not going to happen. Premiers leading majority governments with a little more than a year to go until an election, they do not resign. What do you think about the job Doug Ford is doing and the situation in Ontario on this Monday morning? Paul, Ottawa. Paul, you're on City News. I'm good. I'm come see, come saw. How are you?
Oh, not too bad.
Good. Okay.
You really touched on what I wanted to bring up, and that is I'm very disappointed with our leadership, provincially, federally, the whole 9 yards. And I'm even more disappointed with the fact that we are not disappointed with our leadership, if you know what I mean. Like, I'm stunned to watch how complacent we're being about not getting more upset about the fact that we're being left behind pretty much the rest of the developed world and our vaccination and all the problems that brings in. And I just think down the road, there's going to be other crises that we have to deal with. And it's not just the leadership, but, even the whole government system, the way we have it, there's something not up to par there. And this crisis, this COVID crisis, has really shown that when it's not up to par in critical times, that has serious consequences, lives and the economy and everything like that.
Absolutely, yeah.
And, I really wish we get more, we just demand more for our leaders. We need better leadership. And I'm just perplexed, when I talk to Canadians, they seem like if they're okay with it. And that actually concerns me more than COVID right now. COVID, the end's in sight whenever, we do manage to get the vaccine.
Yep.
But we still have the same type of leadership, the same government and civil service in place at the end of COVID. And like I said, there's something that needs to be improved there, and no one's chatting about that. And I find that really frustrating. And I have to add something else in, too. As a teacher, I'm really disappointed how the kids have really been a second thought. And I think the biggest number one thing that really shows us, they don't get as sick as easily and as much, that's true, but COVID still affects them. And we aren't even talking about the fact that we don't have a vaccine for kids yet. We're all talking about, the vaccine's going to lead us out by June and September, but there's none approved for kids, and no one seems to care, And I'm sorry, Rob Ford, as a teacher in the classroom, he's let us down big time. My class, no windows, no ventilation, and when I went back to teach this year, nothing had changed. There was dust on the desks and my equipment in my room. No one was in there, and it's just we need better.
Okay. All right, Paul. Thank you. Thank you, Paul. Paul, disappointed Ontario teacher. There might be a cabinet shuffle. Yeah, that'll fix things up. They're going to have a cabinet shuffle and bring back Rod Phillips, Minister of St. Bart's. Remember? He was the finance minister who went to St. Bart's at Christmas, but not before he faked the video. Remember with the eggnog and the little gingerbread house? And, might be making a comeback to cabinet, right? Having done his penance. Oh, and not to be outdone, reports out of Queen's Park, Ford, just to get out of trouble, what's he going to do? He's going to pull a Trudeau and prorogue. He's going to prorogue is the latest. Or as some will see it, cut and run, get out of Dodge, can't take the heat, everyone flee the kitchen. Great look. Just take a page out of the Trudeau book of political schemes. This is where we are in Ontario this morning after this crazy weekend. 750-1310. 750-1310. Is it Jean?
Yeah.
Jean? Yeah, go ahead, Jean. Good morning. What do you think about what's going on in Ontario right now, Jean?
Well, it's a mess.
It's a mess.
And I don't know. I just, Ford is in a bad spot. I wouldn't want to wear his shoes.
No.
He's getting it from every angle, plus the federal end of it. I haven't always heard bad things said from him about the federal government. They're given guidelines they're supposed to follow, and it gets dumped in their lap. I wouldn't want to be there.
Okay.
But I have something else of tremendous concern, I guess.
All right.
I don't understand why, in the beginning, Mr. Trudeau did not shut down the international flights.
Well, why are they still open? You can make the case why they're still open, right? Yeah, sure.
And we have four airports accepting international flights here in Canada. I mean, directly.
Yep.
Toronto, one of our biggest hotspots, gets approximately 36,000 passengers a week. So if we're getting all of this coming into our country and they're landing right in Toronto, being as it's Ontario, what the hell is Doug Ford supposed to do with that anyway? And the ones coming into Montreal, they're right next door. Like right to Ottawa from Montreal is what, an hour and a half, 2 hours?
Yeah, hour and a half, 2 hours, yeah.
So until they shut down those international borders, I don't ever see an end in sight.
Okay. All right, thank you. Thank you, Gene. Thank you. Yep. 750-1310, 750-1310. Yeah, I'm just looking at the arrivals list for Pearson this morning. Lima, Peru, Detroit, Charlotte, Frankfurt, Dallas, Newark, Amsterdam, Doha. That's in Qatar. Chicago. Where else? Tokyo, Shanghai, by way of Seoul, South Korea. Charlotte, Shanghai again. Abu Dhabi. Dubai, Tokyo, London Heathrow, Tokyo, Detroit, Frankfurt, Dallas, London Heathrow, London, Ontario, Newark, London Heathrow, Chicago, Charlotte, Dallas-Fort Worth, Atlanta, Georgia, and Miami, Florida. Flights arriving at Pearson today. 750-1310, back after the news. We've reached halftime on the Talkback Hour. How we doing in Ontario today? What do you think of the job Doug Ford is doing? This is the Rob Snow Show on City News.
News in Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News, now on 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
It's Monday, April 19th. Good morning. I'm Andrew Boyle. Right now in Ottawa, 11 degrees. In Smiths Falls, it's 10. Here's what's making news this hour. We have the latest COVID-19 numbers in the province of Ontario showing an additional 4,447 new cases and 19 more deaths. 233 of the new cases are in Ottawa, 32 more in Eastern Ontario Health Unit, 12 in Leeds, Grenville, Lanark, 11 more cases in Renfrew County. Ottawa police have reopened the Walkley Transit Station after receiving a call for a suspicious package. This was just after 7 o'clock this morning. Now, for safety precautions, both Walkley and Heron OC Transpo stations were closed to the public. The investigation revealed the suspicious package contained a sewing machine. Both stations have since reopened. Organizers of the Boots and Hearts Music Festival, the latest to pull the plug now. Republic Live says ongoing COVID-19 restrictions in Ontario make it impossible to move forward with the concerts at that summertime music staple. City News Time, 10:32. I'm Andrew Boyle. For news anytime, follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
Talk back.
Hello. On the Rob Snow Show. The phone lines are open at 613-750-1310.
Now, the Rob Snow Show continues.
So the Ontario legislature is back for how long? Who knows? But the NDP have a lot of motions they want to put forward because there's a real belief that they're going to prorogue. Doug Ford is going to get at a Dodge, going to pull a Trudeau, going to get at a hot water by proroguing the legislature. This is Andrea Horvath.
Implement paid time off for vaccinations, helping facilitate the timely vaccination of Ontario's workers as part of the fight against COVID-19.
They want unanimous consent.
Seeking unanimous consent of the House to move a motion without notice, calling on the government to implement paid time off for vaccination. Agreed? Agreed. Heard a no.
Point of order.
Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you, Speaker. I seek unanimous consent to move a motion without notice calling on the Ford government to implement a full shutdown of Ontario's non-essential businesses where the risk of COVID-19 spread is high and extend adequate financial supports to help the workers and businesses impacted by the interruption.
The Opposition is seeking unanimous consent of the House to move a motion without notice, calling on the government to implement a full shutdown of Ontario's non-essential businesses where the risk of COVID spread is high. Agreed? Agreed. Heard a no.
Point of order, Speaker.
Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you, Speaker. Speaker, I seek unanimous consent to immediately pass private members' motion 136, calling on the Ford government to provide financial assistance for small businesses not eligible for other supports during the pandemic.
The Opposition is seeking unanimous consent of the House to immediately pass private members' motion 136, calling on the government to provide financial assistance for small businesses not eligible for other supports during the pandemic. Agreed? Heard a no. Point of order, the member for Scarborough-Guildwood.
All right.
Thank you, Speaker. Speaker, I seek unanimous consent.
I think we'll come back to that when the question period begins. I don't hear or see Doug Ford in the legislature again, and we may not for a while by the sounds of things. James, Ottawa, good morning. You're on City News.
Hey, Rob, good morning.
James, what do you think about the situation in Ontario this morning? All these cases.
Well, I think it's definitely not, we're not an enviable place by any means. Yeah. I just wanted to chime in. I'm a medical device, and so I'm in and out of hospitals. I just drove over the King Edward Bridge, the main bridge, and the police are there, but they're not stopping people. The traffic was free-flowing. I just drove into Quebec.
Okay.
And there was they were there, just not stopping people. On the way back to Ontario, there was a bit of a backup, but again, people weren't getting stopped. They were just backed up.
Right. Okay. This morning, though, there were long delays. The line, according to one of the traffic reporters this morning, the line of traffic at one point this morning stretched 10 kilometers long.
Yeah,
stop and go traffic. Yeah,
I heard that
during the rush hour, during what used to be called rush hour.
Yeah, very unfortunate. I think it's a very poor decision. No different than closing golf courses. A very poor decision. I think they need to utilize the rapid testing. If someone's going to spend 6 hours golfing, they won't mind getting there a bit early and doing a rapid test. It's just we're not utilizing the tools. All they're doing is defaulting to shutdown. It doesn't make any sense, in my opinion.
I mean, over the weekend when they were backtracking on things like extraordinary police powers and closing down playgrounds, one of the things Premier Ford said in his tweet was, well, it's all about trying to discourage private gatherings and illegal gatherings and these sorts of things. Well, who do they think these people are trying to get into Ottawa at 5:30 in the morning? Are they going to a Bush party? Are they going to a house party at 6 o'clock in the morning? Who are these people? They're people going to work, right?
Agreed.
Yeah.
Couldn't agree more. They're essential workers. They're nurses and personal care workers trying to get to hospitals.
Yeah.
It's what he's doing. He's in over his head. He seems overwhelmed. I voted for him. I couldn't vote for him again based on what's transpired.
Okay, thank you. All right, the question period's underway. Just hang on there, ladies and gentlemen. Talk back out. I want to hear this. Okay.
Decided not to take the advice of the medical experts that asked him to deal with this horrifying situation in our province. He chose not to. Will he instead do that today?
Minister of Health.
Thank you very much, Speaker. Well, in fact, we have been taking the advice of the medical experts since this pandemic began. We have been taking their advice with respect to the need to maintain physical distancing, to follow the public health rules, to the declaration of the state of emergency, most recently in the stay-at-home order. We also followed the advice that was given to us that we needed to step down on scheduled surgeries, which we did. We followed the advice with respect to rolling out and redeploying health human resources from one location to another to make sure that in hotspots we had adequate people to care for those in intensive care. And we also followed their advice in order to be able to move patients around if necessary from one location to another to deploy all of our health workforce and our health availability in intensive care and other units across the province.
Hoping the Premier would show up in the legislature this morning, not to be. Darlene in Pembroke. Good morning, Darlene.
Good morning, Rob.
Hi.
I'm just calling to say that I have complete confidence in Doug Ford.
You do?
Yes, I do, for the simple fact of you're darned if you do, you're darned if you don't.
Right, okay.
And he's there trying to keep a balance in keeping businesses, especially small business, going. Plus, on top of everything else, it seems right now that everything's being dumped onto him, where there's just...
Well, he's the premier. He's the premier of a province with a population of 14.5 million people and a GDP of $600 billion. A big job.
Exactly.
Okay? He ran for the job. Okay.
Oh, I realize that.
Right.
But it's...
he wanted the big job. Well, here it is. Here it is, Mr. Premier.
Yeah, but I don't think anyone was prepared for this virus in the picture. It's sort of I don't know how to say it. It's just that to me, everything is being dumped on him.
Everything is being dumped. And do you think other people are being left off the hook, or getting off the hook, or getting off easier than he is, kind of thing, or?
Yes, I do.
Okay, well, there may be something to that. There may be something to that, Darlene. You may be on. You know what? You may be onto something there. I don't think you're the first to point that out. I mean, you can't help but think there's lots of smiling from Liberals in Ottawa. They're watching Doug Ford kind of squirm because of everything that's going on in Ontario. Don't think they don't take pleasure in it. The federal Liberals, they know it's going to help them politically when Mr. Trudeau finally does call the election, with the next piece of that puzzle falling into place this morning with the federal budget at 4 o'clock this afternoon. And, to Darlene's point, it's Justin Trudeau to the rescue. Isn't that one of the narratives that we're hearing right now? Justin Trudeau to Doug Ford's rescue. Trudeau bailing out Doug Ford. That's how bad it is in Ontario. Justin Trudeau needs to ride into the rescue. Why? Because he's managed this crisis so well? What's his review on TripAdvisor? Does he have 5 stars on TripAdvisor? Track record, what? Unblemished? Mr. Trudeau's government? Are you kidding me? Some of the news to come out of his news conference this weekend is bewildering. We had this announcement that hundreds of additional healthcare workers are going to be on the way, right? We're going to dispatch them to Ontario. Well, where are they coming from? Does the federal government have some secret warehouse somewhere? It's just filled with spare nurses and spare doctors and respiratory therapists and all this, just in case, break glass in case of emergency? No, I don't think so, right? They're playing healthcare whack-a-mole. They're taking a healthcare worker from some other part of the country and they're going to plug him into the GTA. Mr. Trudeau says more rapid testing is going to be made available for Ontario. But if there's more rapid testing capacity even available, well, why are you waiting? Why weren't you doing that weeks ago, months ago? It's the 13th month of the pandemic, for crying out loud. What are you doing just deploying this stuff now? Well, a third wave snuck up on you? Another one. The Canadian Red Cross is standing by, says one of the news reports. Standing by to help mobile vaccination clinics. Standing by for what? Standing by for what? Okay? What are you waiting for? For the situation to get worse? If not now, then when? Why would you stand by for anything? How much worse does it have to get before you're no longer standing by? And then you had the whole business of vaccines, the AstraZeneca vaccine. And look, I'm happy. I'm 49 years old, okay? I'm thrilled about this news, 40 plus. But why is it okay now when last week it was only available to people over the age of 55 because of the whole overblown scare on blood clots? Why is it now that the feds are saying, well, 55 is just a recommendation. Feel free to fiddle around with the recommendation from the National Advisory Committee on Immunization. Feel free. Health Canada's approved it for everyone over the age of 18. I mean, it's the National Advisory Committee on Immunization. It doesn't that sound authoritative? Its recommendation, AstraZeneca should not be used in adults under the age of 55. And yet now, as of yesterday, thrown out the window. Now, if you're 40 years and older, go ahead and book an appointment. There's a shop somewhere in the city just waiting to make its way into your arm. Trudeau, hero, Ford, heel. WrestleMania 35 coming to you in the cage. Jacinda in Ottawa. Jacinda.
Hi.
How are you?
Hi.
Good.
I was just calling to say, I'm critical of Doug Ford. I know he's not alone, and he has all of his advisors, but I think what Canadians really need to keep in mind, and people in Ontario, I guess especially, is that when you trade freedom for security, you really get neither. I think people should be concerned by the fact that I think the government is kind of viewing the virus as just caseload, just death rate, and that's all that's important, when it's like, well, people have individual rights, small businesses, as people keep mentioning, the economy in general. It doesn't exist in a vacuum. The virus does not exist in a vacuum, and you really should be concerned when the government starts to say, well, we're doing this for, the benefit of public health, for all of society.
For safety, yeah. For public safety, yeah.
Really keep in mind that, trading your freedoms for security is a slippery slope, and I don't think it's something we should just roll over and accept. Should definitely keep it in mind going forward. But, I feel bad for Doug Ford. He's in a tough situation. Not saying I could do better, but it does seem counterintuitive to force people indoors when this is a virus that really requires ventilation. So you'd think encouraging outdoor gatherings would be preferable. But who am I to say?
Okay. So. Thank you, Jacinda. Thank you. We're back with more of your calls in the final quarter of the Talkback Hour. It's a fiery one today because I'm kind of underslept and fired up. Rob Snow Show on City News.
Here at the Thirsty Maiden, we offer a variety of products. So everything from breakfast items, so it's breakfast sandwiches and scones, which have become a staple item here at the cafe. We have an assortment of pastries and cakes and desserts. So we're really big on our dessert bar, which a lot of people come here for. And of course, our delicious coffee beverages. So we do offer not your typical lattes, things like a chocolate banana coconut latte, cinnamon coconut, which is my favorite, and our take on even a pumpkin spice, which we add nutmeg and a dash of cayenne in just to give it a bit of a kick. When you start a business, you don't factor in all the things that could go wrong. You think anything that goes wrong, any failure, it's got to be something on your shoulders. You didn't market right, you're carrying the wrong products, you didn't price your items correctly, all the things, right? But when this pandemic began, things going through my brain were I didn't factor in a pandemic. And we were just starting to grow. We were about to blow up, and I think I spent 2 days crying, and then I shut my business down for I think a period of 2 or 3 days. And just being at home during that time, I realized this is not me. Anybody that knows me knows I'm a hard worker. I don't give up, and I'm a go-getter. And I started to think, well, I should probably just start clearing out my freezers and posting and seeing who wants to buy what. And that was sort of how I built my momentum back up. I realized that there's still a large number of people that wanted to support us and were looking for the items that I had to provide. So we started there. Then I reopened literally not even 3 or 4 days after I'd closed my doors, and then started doing curbside pickups and deliveries, started doing the deliveries myself, free deliveries to the local community, going as far as Bell's Corners and Carp as well. And that's why we're still here. This community has really kept us going a year into the pandemic. We've had a changeover of staff a couple times now, and situations change, and when you can't offer hours and hours for your employees, you don't blame them when they have to go elsewhere. So I think that's also been one of the challenges is recruiting, training, and then they leave, and then bringing in more people and recruiting, and anybody in this industry will tell you that that's something we deal with on a regular basis, whether or not COVID's in the mix or not, but more so now because every time there's a lockdown, there's a risk of will we make it through? And then you lay off more staff. And again, their situations and their circumstances change.
Time to talk back
on the Rob Snow Show.
Have your say and call now.
613-750-1310.
Just to review, because we've been tough on Ford, as well we should be, right? But this afternoon, the morning kind of belongs to Ford, but this afternoon it's going to be all about Trudeau, because the budget is coming out, right? Mr. Trudeau over the weekend, yesterday. Do we have some tape, David? Let's play a few clips, okay? Yeah, go ahead.
If you live in Ontario, I want you to know that Canadians are with you. The best public health advice tells us the way to roll back this surge right away is to starve the virus by strictly following public health guidelines and restricting your interactions with others. As you do that, we are standing up the kind of help you need. First, we are mobilizing federal healthcare workers from across government departments to deploy to the front lines in Ontario and specifically the GTA, where the situation is most critical.
Okay, so more healthcare workers. Well, where were they last week? Where were they last month? Why now? More rapid tests. Well, where were they last week? Where were they last month? More vaccine clinics, mobile vaccine clinics on standby. On standby for what exactly? What are you standing by for? For things to, worsen? And go ahead and use the vaccine in younger people, even though that's not what our own advisory committee on immunization recommends. So just do it. Go right ahead. We're not going to stand in your way. Well, why didn't you say that months ago? We've got elective, non-urgent surgeries. Unless it's your surgery, in which case it's not really elective and it's kind of urgent for you, I bet. Delayed again. School's closed. Golf course is closed because, I don't know, let's just wreck another industry. We wrecked the downhill skiing industry. Let's just do the same with golf, We'll get the 2-4. Maybe we'll go after curling next. Okay. Playgrounds, well, they were closed and now they're okay now. Police on the bridges, police on the 400 series highways, border control. It's easier, honest to goodness, it is easier for someone to come to Canada from New Delhi, India, than it is for someone to come to Ottawa from Gatineau. I can take a flight from Seoul, South Korea, transfer in Frankfurt, land at Pearson, be on my merry way. But I can't walk down the street to see my grandmother. No tennis, no basketball, no baseball. So it may as well snow on Wednesday. There's snow in the forecast for Wednesday. Give me 30 centimeters. There's nowhere to go anyway. James, downtown James.
Morning, Rob.
Yeah.
Hope you had a good weekend at the Lakeside Mansion.
Everything's good, yeah.
A few quick points. I think Ford seems to be getting, maybe this could, you could talk to some experts over the week. He seems to be getting some bad advice from the science table on. They seem to be very, very concerned about one thing, which is mobility data, which is, how much people are outside moving around as opposed to what actual things are dangerous. So he's doing anything to reduce the mobility data. And you saw the presentation last week from the science committee talking about they seem to be really worried about mobility data. I don't think that's actually the worst, the best measure, the most important thing to worry about. I guess the bridges, it just shows how many essential workers there are. It's obviously not teachers today. There's tons of unvaccinated essential workers that need to come across every day to keep the food and the medical industries going. So I thought that was quite interesting. It actually was not that bad. I know Ford made some bad decisions based on, I think, some poor advice, but I was out all weekend. The wastewater numbers are way down in Ontario and Ottawa. People were out biking along the canal. They had the roads closed and along the river. People seem to be quite happy, etc. So I think people bounced back from some of the bad decisions on Friday. But so I think there's some good news coming around the corner with vaccinations and the COVID wastewater numbers coming down in Ottawa, particularly in Ottawa. I don't know about Toronto.
Yeah.
But a couple of things. I am a huge supporter.
But at the same time, more people in hospital than ever.
Yes.
More people in ICU than ever.
Well, the Ottawa numbers, I'm not
Case
quite sure when they
counts
report.
4,400, right? Yeah.
I'm not sure if the Ottawa numbers, hospitalization numbers, include people that are actually being flown in from Toronto. So I'm not quite sure about the Ottawa specific.
Well, yeah, that's a good point. 233, it says, cases. How many people in the hospital in the Ottawa hospitals are actually from Toronto? Yeah.
I would just like to know that data. A couple more quick points. Sorry, Rob.
Sure.
I'm a huge supporter of the Canadian Armed Forces, but what Trudeau is talking about is a joke. Our health part of the Canadian Forces is quite small. They're mainly family doctors, a few nurses, and physician assistants. They are not going to be working in ICUs. There's no shortage of family. Well, sorry. They're not going to help this will not help the ICU shortage whatsoever. So if they're going to send 50 physician assistants to Toronto, maybe it looks good for Trudeau's poll numbers, but it doesn't help the situation at all. I thought it was kind of interesting. Another point that Patty had.
Plus, is the military health system so robust that it can just spare a few hundred people?
I'm not. I don't think it's a few hundred. I think it's probably going to be. I'd like you to follow up, but I'm thinking less than 100, and they will not be. They are not respirologists. They are not anesthetists, etc. They are not the people that are actually needed, right? I think the other thing I found interesting that Patty Hatch basically threw NACI under the bus about this age limit
go ahead.
stuff.
Go ahead and use it. Go ahead and lower it. It's just a recommendation.
It's just to ban NACI, but then at the same time, she actually was using NACI as an excuse for the 4-month a gap between vaccinations. So why is NACI garbage or not?
Yeah, it's a good point. Good point. Why are we listening to this? No. I got 4 calls to get to in 4 minutes to do it. Mark, you're on the air, Mark.
Thanks, Rob.
Yeah.
Well, kudos to James for a reality check on Trudeau's grand promise to deploy military physicians. But my point is this. Even though I agree that Doug Ford's leadership has been flawed, and I wish he'd change some of the things he's doing, I wouldn't call for him to step down unless I was convinced there was someone waiting in the wings who would take his place and do a better job. It's not like the situation in Ottawa, where I do believe that Chrystia Freeland would make a better prime minister than Justin Trudeau. At managing the pandemic, I don't believe there would have been the We Charity scandal nor the SNC-Lavalin affair. I haven't read David Moscrop's column, But has he identified anyone who he thinks could take Doug Ford's place and do a better job?
No.
Because until such a person comes forward, having the premier resign really won't improve the situation. It might,
Well, no, this is why, they're going to have a cabinet shuffle. Well, what's that going to solve? We're going to have new people learning brand new departments in government again as we start all over on some of these files,
But there is some, everybody's, you've got one group of people saying do this, do this, do this, another part of the population saying do the opposite, and he's struggling to play both sides, and inevitably you alienate both sides, and it's really an impossible situation, and I don't think there's no Messiah leader here.
Yeah. Okay, Mark, thank you. Just a couple of more calls here very quickly before we run out of time. David in the West End. David.
Good morning, Rob.
Yeah, David, yeah.
Rob, isn't it amazing how the opposition always know what to do until they get in power?
Okay, yeah.
Just a thought.
Yeah.
Now, my cancer appointment with my doctor was canceled some time ago, and I was told that I would get a phone call.
Right.
Well, I got the phone call this morning.
Oh, yes.
To cancel my phone call.
Oh, okay.
So, Rob, shut the travel down, please.
Shut the international travel.
The international, they're bringing it in. Isn't it? Go back to day one.
Yeah.
Isn't that how it all started?
Well, some believe that it didn't help. That's for sure. It didn't help.
No,
right?
wait, that city that this
Wuhan,
started in allowed all kinds of flights to leave.
Sure.
All over the world.
Yeah.
So.
Well, and plus we were being told by Patty Hajdu and other travel bans don't work, right? Travel bans don't work.
Fauci told us that.
Okay.
Yes, he did.
But David, how do you feel? Okay, you're up there in your fancy penthouse there with a beautiful view of the city, including the Gatineau Hills. I mean, you see this traffic jam this morning. You do realize these are just people who are trying to get to work in the morning, right?
Okay. Essential people must travel.
Yeah.
It's a must.
You have to.
Okay?
Yeah.
But the rest of us, shut the place down and allow businesses to let one or two people in at a time, open up all the businesses, all the restaurants doing the takeout, whatnot. It's so easy to solve if they just take the politics out of it.
Okay, if only there were no politics. Yeah, that's a John Lennon song, I think. Jeff, good morning, Jeff.
Good morning.
Yeah.
Everybody's blaming Doug Ford.
Yep.
You know what?
What?
Stay at home. Listen to what he says.
Okay.
Traffic on the Queensway is a joke. Where are these people going at 10 o'clock in the morning? You don't start your work at 10 o'clock in the morning. I'm a delivery driver. I'm trying to get stuff to stores, trying to get the essentials, masks and gloves to senior citizen homes. And I got these people in front of me, one in a car, one in another car, doing nothing. Stay at home.
Stay at home.
What? Do you think this disease just walked up and knocks on doors and says, hey, I'm going to get you. You're going to have the disease now.
No,
it's transmitted by going around.
Sure.
Stay at home, let it die down, and get back to work in a couple of weeks.
All right.
These small businessmen, I'm sorry, you put your house up against your small business, and you think it's going to stay? You think your business is going to run for 100 years? You're not going to worry about it? No. If you put your house up, you're crazy.
Okay.
And if you don't want to
gotta go, Jeff. Gotta go. Jeff says stay the blazes home. People, news coming up with Andrew. This is City News.
news in Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News, now on 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
It's Monday, April 19th. Good morning. I'm Andrew Boyle. Right now in Ottawa, 11 degrees. In Smiths Falls, 10 degrees. And here's what's making news in Ottawa and the Valley. Latest COVID-19 numbers are out with 4,447 new cases today in Ontario. 19 more deaths are being blamed on this virus as well. The numbers come from just under 43,000 tests that were completed, with a positivity rate of about 10.5%. 233 of the new cases are in Ottawa, 32 in Eastern Ontario. There are 12 more in Leeds, Grenville, Lanark, 11 new cases today in Renfrew. Those coming into Ottawa from Gatineau now have to go through police checkpoints on the Ontario side. Mayor Jim Watson of Ottawa, though, is not happy with the move. City News reporter Alex Gouge joins us with the details.
Mayor Jim Watson feels the move is ridiculous and was not well thought out. He says the city and Ottawa police only found out about the new measures after the province made their announcement. He tells the Rob Snow Show how this will financially impact the police service.
It's going to cost us hundreds of thousands of dollars because you have 5 bridge crossings, 2 ferry crossings, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And there are so many reasons why you don't have to prove that you're coming over to Ontario because you work here, or goods and services, medical reasons, compassionate reasons, and so on.
Watson adds he didn't support checkpoints on the Quebec side last year and still does not support it on the Ontario side right now. He feels it's one economy between Ottawa and Gatineau, so it makes no sense to implement a checkpoint in between the two regions. Alex Gouge, City News.
City News time, 11:03. Once air travel is a lot more frequent, you may be considering a trip. And one thing to make it safer is an Ottawa solution to disinfecting airplanes.
Ray's our autonomous UVC robot for aviation. Ray's meant to run down the aisle of the aircraft, ultimately giving off a very specific frequency of light that disinfects to an incredibly high percentage, 99.9+ percentage, knocking out all those pathogens that we don't want in our lives these days.
The robot was built at Aero Hygienics, an aviation consulting company in Canada, by 3 locals. One is Chris Rupe, who explains that when the UVC light hits surfaces, it destroys the DNA of pathogens and prevents them from replicating again. The group says they would like to see Ray on every flight, and sales are starting to flow in. City News time, 11:04. Now your forecast with meteorologist Jill Taylor.
We are heading into quite a weather week. We've got mixed conditions, a slight chance of some showers today, but some clearing too. The high 17 degrees, the wind out of the southwest. Tonight, mainly clear through the evening, chance of showers overnight near 5, and tomorrow mainly cloudy, the high near 8. For today, the high 17.
And right now in Ottawa, 11 degrees. In Smiths Falls, it's 10. NDP leader Jagmeet Singh is urging the Prime Minister to declare a public welfare emergency under the Emergencies Act in light of what he calls a dire COVID-19 situation in Ontario. He says that could help ensure a more coordinated delivery of vaccines to those who need them most. And the president of UEFA says players at the 12 teams that are setting up their own Super Soccer League could be banned from this year's European Championship and next year's World Cup. The president spoke at a UEFA committee executive meeting held just hours after the English, Italian, and Spanish clubs announced a project that threatens to split European soccer. The 12 clubs plan to start the breakaway Super League earlier, and they told the leaders of FIFA and UEFA they have begun legal action aimed at fending off any threat to block that competition. I'm Andrew Boyle. For News Anytime, follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
Firm.
Fair.
Fun.
The Rob Snow Show returns
on Rogers TV and City News, 101.1 FM
and 1310 AM.
Geoffrey Johnston writes about international affairs for the Kingston Whig-Standard. He's a columnist there, and he joins me this morning. Our focus is going to be the budget. Good morning, Geoffrey.
Good morning, Rob.
Yeah, welcome back. Welcome back. Certainly when it comes to federal budget day, international affairs is really not top of mind, whether it's foreign aid or some of Canada's goals abroad. What, as an international affairs columnist, do you think are top of mind priorities on the spending side based on what we know about the Trudeau government?
That's a good question. So the big issue is the pandemic, of course. And a lot of what I've been writing about is the impact it's been having on international development. Now, there's a coalition of national associations of international development and humanitarian organizations. And they have come out and said that the pandemic response has to be a big priority for the Trudeau government in today's budget. So the pandemic's caused economically $10 trillion of damage to the global economy, and it's pushed tens of millions of additional people into extreme poverty. And this means decades of progress on international development issues such as child and maternal health, extreme poverty, clean water. They have been wiped out in low and middle income countries. Now, globally, there has been a lack of leadership on international development issues, especially during the pandemic. And so these NGOs, non-governmental organizations, are urging Canada to fill the void, the Trudeau government to step up and take a leadership role. Yet Canada's international development has been declining. International development assistance has been declining in recent decades. Cooperation Canada points out that Canada has been delivering about 0.27% of gross national income to international development assistance. And back in 1970, the United Nations General Assembly passed a resolution. It said that wealthy nations should contribute 0.7% of their gross national income. And so we're falling way behind that at just a little over 0.25%. Right now, Canada's at its lowest commitment in 50 years when it comes to international development assistance. So what I'm looking for is that Canada will make a clear commitment to international development assistance in this budget to respond to the pandemic and try to mitigate the worst effects of it.
And what are those funds used for then?
Well, yeah, so some of this money would go to international development for child and maternal health, because we do know that with the pandemic, women are suffering in greater numbers from malnutrition. And actually, my current piece for the Kingston Whig-Standard is about the food crisis in South Sudan, and it's the worst food crisis in their history. So there needs to be a commitment to address malnutrition resulting from the pandemic. Another thing would be girls' education. So a big thing has happened is with all these children out of school in the developing world as a result of the pandemic, many girls will not go back to school when the pandemic ends. And we need to actually address that with specific targeted programming, because when girls don't go to school, then that means that they end up in early child forced marriage. And so you have girls, 13, 14 being married off. This ends up causing sexual abuse. Girls end up by getting pregnant at a young age, and that means a higher mortality rate for them. So that's another thing that has to be addressed. And then another thing is sanitation, water, hygiene. That's known as WASH, because, it's a big problem globally. It's a big health problem.
Water, sanitation, and hygiene is known in international development circles as WASH. Okay, I didn't know that. Okay, all right.
Yeah, that's exactly what it's known as. And it's a major cause of preventable illness, because many diseases are waterborne. So that's another area that we should really concentrate on, because we are literally losing decades of progress because of the pandemic. So these are some of the top priorities I think should be addressed. I think some of them will be. Canada, to be fair, during the pandemic, Canada has ponied up for the COVAX facility. We were one of the first in there, giving a lot of money. Overall, Canada...
One of the first in there helping ourselves to the spoils, too, Geoffrey.
Well, that's true, too, because we got in a fix with the vaccines. The OECD, the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, ranks Canada 9th out of 29 countries when it comes to official development assistance. So I'd like to see us move up a little bit in that ranking.
Okay. What about the military side and our international obligations to things like alliances, NATO, NORAD, those kinds of things?
Yeah, that's a good question. It's a complicated world. So we have a resurgent Russia. They're massing troops on the Ukrainian border.
Yep.
We have a very aggressive communist regime in China that's claiming international waters in the South China Sea and the East China Sea.
Yeah. Bullying Taiwan on a daily basis now.
Yeah, threatening Taiwan.
After what it did to Hong Kong, right? So.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then China also has designs on the far north, and so we need capabilities in the far north, but I am not confident that there's going to be money during the pandemic for significant contributions to the defense of the country. So we'll have to wait. I'd be really surprised if we saw a lot.
Okay. When it comes to international development, I think, and you know, we're in an era of that's more inward looking. You would agree with that, right? A more kind of nationalist era?
Yes.
Not just because of the last 4 years of the Trump administration, but that's a global thing. A lot of people looking inward. The thickening of borders is something that you and I have talked about a lot over these last few years during these discussions on the radio. So I wonder how much of an appetite there is really for any kind of significant investment in international development. And one of the things that, for example, Stephen Harper and Barack Obama, one of the things they actually had in common was to attempt to make international development more palatable is that it would be tied to governance reforms in recipient countries, because the last thing you want is to see your country giving money to a poorly governed country only to lose it to things like corruption, Geoffrey, right?
Yeah, the governance issue actually has been a big, that actually goes back to the Chrétien days and the new economic partnership for development with Africa back in the early 2000s. The way international development works these days, a lot of the time, though, is the money actually doesn't go to the recipient government. The money will go to non-governmental organizations or other reputable partners on the ground, and then that's how you deal with it. So, for example, in a place like Sudan, South Sudan, where there's a food crisis, money would go to the World Food Program, and some of that money would be immediate humanitarian assistance, but then some of it would be what they call resilience assistance, which tries to build up capacity in those countries over the longer term. Same thing with UNICEF, where the money would go to UNICEF. They would go in and they would target programs for girls so that they stay in school and don't become victims of child marriage and sexual abuse. But what I'll say about this is the natural inclination during this pandemic, I think for a lot of countries, is to just look inwardly, and especially when there's such an economic crisis. But there's also a self-interest in all of this, because if we allow the pandemic to continue to run wild in the developing world, that means that their economies will remain shut down. Global supply chains will not function. We will not be able to acquire, for example, in the developing world, we get a lot of our minerals, rare earth minerals, from parts of the developing world and in Africa. So if the global supply chains aren't working, then that means that we're not going to have a full economic recovery here in Canada, in the developed world. So we have to realize that we're all interconnected. So that's the argument I would make.
Okay. Thank you, Geoffrey. Always good.
Thank you, Rob.
Yeah. Geoffrey Johnston from the Kingston Whig-Standard. David Sali from the Ottawa Business Journal coming up next on City News.
This affected us big time, because when, you know how we are seasoned, we have clothes for the spring, clothes for the winter. That time, lots of clothes didn't arrive on time from Europe or from here, because some factory shut down. So, and this put us in an odd position. We received not all the merchandise, part of the merchandise. And for us, we have to be careful, you know, especially with the virus going on. Did affect the business, of course, like everybody else. We're not immune, and since the government helped, this did a little bit good for us too, but still affected all the sectors, especially clothing. You can see big corporation affected bad because nobody was thought it's gonna be like this. Earthquake might happen. We joke about it before. Things might happen, but this was like a third war, but with a virus. So how to survive? That's the question, and we're doing our best to work with the mall, especially rent in a mall is very high. The government, they have certain, let's say, condition, like how many people will be in the mall or in the stores, etc. Yeah, it's a big factor, but of course, if my store has a back doors or just will be better, it will be much better. At least we can have curbside much easy because we have to shut down completely, and this left a mark on us, on everybody too. People always ask me, go online. Certain things you can't go online, let's say t-shirt, certain product people don't know how to fit. But when it comes to clothing, it's different completely. Let's say I have a customer comes, you can give him 44, but certain suit he might take 42, certain suit he might take 46. So, and how could, suit is not gonna fit the same. And I see people come back and they show me what they got online and not the same fabric. Mostly young people, but if you really want to shop, you have to go to the store because everything will be around you. You want to be sure the color look good, the fit will look good, especially when you spend, doesn't matter how much money, whether 300 or 2,000, You have to try, you have to see what's going on. Please don't be shy, contact us. It will be a pleasure for me to take a suit or coat or anything. Like sometimes people have a funeral, they have things, they have a wedding, they don't want to come to the mall. If I get all the information, I will go and meet them at their home or their business offices. I'm gonna start doing that, and this will help the business and help the people. Like they're afraid to come to the mall for time being, or they're too busy at work. They cannot go anywhere at certain times, so I'm glad to do that.
He's a pillar of community opinion.
The Rob Snow Show returns
on Rogers TV and City News.
101.1 FM
and 1310 AM.
David Sali is back with us from the Ottawa Business Journal. Good morning, David.
Good morning, Rob.
Yeah, great to hear from you. I was just looking up the market cap for Shopify this morning. $181 billion.
$181 billion, yes. Yeah. How did I know you were going to be looking at that, Rob? Yeah.
And then Canadian, $181 billion. And then Royal Bank is $168 billion Canadian. $168 billion Canadian. So Shopify still in the lead for this, at least on paper, most valuable company in the country. And a number of senior executives, people who have been with Shopify for a long time, are leaving the firm. David, tell us about this story.
Right, Rob. So yeah, this not surprisingly got a lot of attention last week. As anything regarding Shopify does, but when almost half of your C-suite announces that it's going to be leaving, well, that's bound to really raise some eyebrows and get people talking in the markets. And that's exactly what happened at Shopify last week. So 3 of their highest-ranking executives have said they're going to leave at different times in June throughout the month. Chief Talent Officer Brittany Forsyth, Chief Legal Officer Joe Frasca, and Chief Technology Officer Jean-Michel Lemieux all have announced they will be moving on to new ventures, new opportunities. Hard to say exactly what that's going to be. We have an inkling for, in some cases. So Toby Luki, the CEO and co-founder, broke the news last week. The email to employees, and he put a positive spin on things, saying they all, contributed tremendously, clearly to Shopify, and they achieved incredible things. But he's happy to see that they're moving on. Feels like this is maybe the best thing for them and for Shopify. For example, Brittany has, and she's by the way, she was employee number 22 at Shopify.
Wow.
Just to put that in perspective, Shopify now has more than 7,000 employees. So, so Brittany Forsyth, she is she's not quite a day oneer, but she's been there for almost a decade. And she's the director. She started as the director of HR, and now she's the head of the HR department for more than 7,000 people.
I mean, she would have been in that little office. Yeah, she would have been in that little office down there in the Byward Market there. And,
Exactly. That's where she started. And Toby had a lot of, very nice things to say about her. They've known each other a long time. He said some of his fondest memories of Shopify involve Britt. And she's leaving behind a world-class culture and team. She's part of this group of executives that's launched Backbone Angels. It's this new angel fund that's focused on financing startups that are run by women and non-binary founders. So I think that's probably going to be where she's going to be focusing her energies for a while. She also said she's hoping to join some epic boards, as she puts it, and find other new opportunities to be a teacher and student, always trying to learn. And, I have a feeling that that Joe Frasca and Jean-Michel Lemieux are also going to be, trying to get involved. They're in other new ventures. They are certainly not retiring by any means, that's for sure. Jean-Michel, he worked at IBM, HP, an Australian software firm. He's been VP of engineering at various places, so he's got a lot of experience. I know education is something he's really passionate about, so maybe he'll get into something in that space. But Rob, this is something that happens to companies, right, as they mature too. Shopify is now kind of entering a whole new sphere in a sense, right? It's starting to get to the size where it's going to try. It's now making noise about going head to head against companies like Amazon in various areas, building out fulfillment networks, that sort of thing. And so it's no longer just this plucky startup that's wanting to arm the rebels and take on the world. This is now a huge company, and it wants to scale up to become one of those global companies you talk about in the same breath as Amazon, Microsoft, Facebook, that kind of thing. So maybe it's time. Maybe it's time for a bit of some new leadership, people with different skill sets in the C-suite to help it take that next big step.
Oh yeah, we're going to be talking about the Shopify. We're going to be talking about the Shopify ecosystem, quite likely the same way. Last week you were here and we talked about, Terry Matthews and his record with Mitel and Newbridge and Celtic House, seeding all of those companies and how it's created an entire network within the technology sector. And as all of these senior executives decide, my Shopify days are over, they'll probably go on and, a lot of them will start their own ventures, right? Some of them may go into venture capital themselves and want to seed their own ventures. Well, right?
Exactly. So, they already are. That's absolutely one of the things Brittany's doing, and I'm sure the others will as well. Let's face it, they've all done very well by Shopify. Let's put it that way. They certainly don't have to worry about money, and they've got some money that they can pump back into the ecosystem, and I'm sure that is definitely part of their agenda. I have no doubt.
Okay, whatever came of the office space? Office centricity is dead, Mr. Lutke said. Remember?
And then a big week, Shopify is always big, but last week it pretty much populated our newsletter. A second big Shopify-related story of the week was, of course, we talked about last fall. They vacated their swanky office there, on 150 Elgin Street. They had 170,000 square feet there. Well, they've moved out, and a co-working company based here in Ottawa called TCC Canada announced last week that it is going to take at least some of that space. It's going to sublease maybe as much as 100,000 square feet of Shopify's old headquarters. They're going to take as many, probably 6 floors there,
wow,
including the floors that have the slide between the 8th and 9th floors there. They're taking over that. They just feel, I talked to Sean Cochran, he's the president of GCC Canada, and he called it one of the best office spaces in the city. I don't think anyone would disagree. Anyone who's seen it anyway. This is, as he puts it, iconic space, and he just thinks that this is going to be something that's really going to attract companies that are looking to rent desks maybe by the month or maybe for a year, whatever, while they see how things go. Well, what address is going to give you more cachet than to say, yeah, I'm at 150 Elgin. I'm on, where Shopify used to be. Yeah, that's where we are now.
That's where we are. Yeah.
I mean, he's really thinking, that's going to drive, drive a lot of word of mouth there. Now, the only thing, Rob, I know you'll be disappointed about this. He said the go-kart track, it's probably got to go.
Oh, okay. They're not keeping the go-kart track.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right. No. He said that just doesn't quite fit. Not quite practical enough, apparently.
I don't know what they have at the Ottawa Business. We have a vending machine. I don't know. We don't have a go-kart track, though.
Really?
No.
You
Yeah.
guys,
And a Keurig. We have a Keurig, too. Yeah.
Yes, okay, yeah. We've got one of those. Okay, well, we're
It's not actually staffed by a barista making a living wage selling only fair trade coffee, however, unfortunately. All right, got to wrap it up there for this week, David. Thank you. Bye.
Okay, thanks, Rob.
David Sali from the Ottawa Business Journal. For this week, it was kind of the Shopify report. Why not? Federal Budget Day is coming up after the news with Jagmeet Singh. What would he like to see in the federal budget? We'll ask the federal NDP leader on City News.
Local news in Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News, now on 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
It's Monday, the 19th of April. Good morning. I'm Sarah Buchan. Right now in Ottawa and in Smith Falls, we've got some sunshine and 13 degrees. Here's what's making news right now. Provincial health officials reporting 4,447 new cases of COVID-19 in Ontario, 19 more deaths due to the virus. The numbers out of over 42,000 tests. Hospitalizations in Ontario at over 2,200. There are 755 people in hospital due to COVID and 516 patients on ventilators. What's the local picture? Ottawa Public Health reporting 203 new cases and 131 people in Ottawa hospitals, 34 patients in ICU. The active cases in the capital numbering over 3,400. Elsewhere locally, province reporting 32 new cases in Eastern Ontario and 11 in Renfrew County, while the Leeds-Grenville-Lanark Health Unit reporting 36 new cases, 2 of those in the last 24 hours. Delays are thinning out somewhat, but still a pause for people crossing from Gatineau into Ottawa as Ottawa police set up checkpoints in place just after midnight to adhere to the provincial rules that were a part of the Friday announcement. Early travelers were reporting lengthy delays of over an hour waiting to cross. Mayor Jim Watson says he's not a fan and wasn't a fan of the checkpoints that the Quebec government put in place last spring. Watson says upwards of 50 officers are tied to manning these checkpoints, and the cost estimated at hundreds of thousands of dollars, and it's a bill that will be passed on to the provincial government. Conservative leader Aaron O'Toole getting his 2 cents in ahead of this afternoon's federal budget, holding a brief news conference this morning to warn that the Liberals have a track record of investing in what he called risky schemes. O'Toole believes the Liberals will incur a massive level of debt that Prime Minister Justin Trudeau expects future generations of Canadians to pay for. I'm Sarah Buchan. For News Anytime, follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
He's the opinionated Ottawa icon.
The Rob Snow Show returns
on Rogers TV and City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Welcoming back to the Rob Snow Show on City News, leader of Canada's New Democrats, Mr. Jagmeet Singh. Good morning.
Good morning, sir.
Yeah, nice to hear from you again, Mr. Singh. You have written to the Prime Minister, just before we get into the budget wish list, you have written to the Prime Minister suggesting the declaration of a public welfare emergency under the Emergencies Act, under the Federal Emergencies Act. Why, Mr. Singh?
Sadly, we are seeing Darfur in a train wreck response to the third wave, which has really meant that we've got a horrible third wave hitting essential workers, frontline workers, and a situation which has gotten really catastrophic. ICU units are being filled. Healthcare workers are being pushed to their limits. Things are really bad. So the 2 tools we want to use in the Emergencies Act, one is to get the vaccines to the people who need it most. We know that the poorest communities, the ones that are the most likely to get infected, are also the lowest vaccination rate. So we need to change that. So tools to get the vaccine to people who need it most. And secondly, we need more access to paid sick leave. All the experts agree this is the most important tool to keeping workers sick. We just heard in Ottawa, 9 employees at various stores have gotten sick at work. And we know that we need to keep people safe, and paid sick leave is one of the best ways to do it. These are 2 things we can do with the Emergencies Act.
Okay, so the bottlenecks in the vaccination rollout, for example, affluent neighborhoods with high rates of vaccination, low-income neighborhoods, not so much. How do you think that could be remedied through the Emergencies Act?
Well, this is just a step in and say, clearly, Darfur has just done such a horrible job. We need to step in and provide some supports to make this happen. It would involve directing the vaccine to communities. It would open up doors to doing things like mobile vaccination, setting up spots at places of employment, at warehouses, factories, going door to door if necessary to get people vaccinated in communities that are hard hit. What we're seeing right now is a very serious crisis. Field hospitals are being needed to set up in Ontario. It should never have got to this, and we need to do something really to balance the urgency. We need to do something as proportionally serious to solve the problem, and that's why we're calling for using these tools to direct the vaccines to the right places and to get help to people who need it most.
Okay, I mean, this is what it sounded like in the Ontario legislature all morning. Your old stomping grounds, Mr.
Debating this Thursday, MPP Coteau's Bill 247 on paid sick days,
and pass it here in this legislature.
And I'll remind members to make their comments through the chair. Government House Leader.
With respect to the bill, Mr. Speaker, I know that's in front of the legislature, I believe, Thursday, and
I mean, they've been going at it all morning. Premier Ford has insisted all the way along that there is a federal program of paid sick days to Canada Sickness Recovery Benefit, and that if people need to access paid sick days, they should apply for that benefit. Very few Canadians actually have. It's undersubscribed, shall we say, Mr. Singh. But is that really Premier Ford's fault that a program is so poorly designed with inadequate replacement wages and a delay in actually accessing the cash? Is that Premier Ford's fault, or is that on the Prime Minister for such a poorly designed program, Mr. Singh?
Well, both, really. To be frank, it's both. Doug Ford canceled, and one of the first things he did when he became Premier was to get rid of the paid sick days that were available. That was one of the first things he did. As a province that is so hard hit right now with such a catastrophic situation, he absolutely bears responsibility in a very poor rollout of the vaccine and providing no real supports to people that are getting sick. So he certainly has played a role in this, and is absolutely to be blamed. And absolutely, at the same time, we've said from the beginning that the paid sick leave program federally wasn't good enough. And if we need more tools to get the paid sick leave out to people, the Emergencies Act gives us lots of tools, including the ability to make direct payments to people, which could include workers who are taking time off to go get vaccinated or who end up getting sick. But at this point, we know that there is not enough being done, and the situation is really serious. I've spoken with some of my friends who are healthcare workers, and they are just at their brink. Things are really bad, and that's why we need to take some really drastic measures that are going to help people, and that's what we're calling for.
Okay. Jagmeet Singh is our guest. He's the leader of Canada's New Democrats. It's budget day in Ottawa, and according to reports, the federal Liberals are planning a $10 a day childcare program, a national $10 a day childcare program. That's according to news reports this morning. If that is indeed accurate, what is your reaction to that, sir?
Well, we welcome that. This is something that we've long called for. We campaigned on many times. Our big concern is that the Liberal government has promised some form of childcare for over 27 years, I think. So almost 3 decades of broken promises. Justin Trudeau's been in government, going on 6 years now. They could have done this anytime. So it's taken almost 3 decades to get us to this point. But again, I'm worried that this will be another case of the Liberals saying one thing and then not doing it. We know that it's vital. Women are at the lowest job participation rate in decades. Things are really tough for women particularly. They're spread thin. They got to care for their kids. They got to care for their aging loved ones that also are getting sick. And on top of that, there's no childcare available. So this is really important. It's a part of the recovery, and we want to see it actually happen.
Okay. What about a $100 billion stimulus program? What do you think about that?
Well, the stimulus program, it really depends where it goes. And one of the big concerns we had is that the wage subsidy program, which we fought for because we knew it was going to keep people employed, and it did, we said it should have strings attached where no money goes to companies that are going to pay out dividends to their shareholders. If they're going to give executive bonuses, that should not happen. And what we've seen is exactly that. Other countries like Germany, which we cited, made it clear if you're going to get public help, you cannot pay dividends. You cannot be enriching your shareholders. You can't be giving bonuses to your executives. If you needed help, it has to go. The purpose of it is to keep people employed. It shouldn't be going to giving extra money to the ultra-rich. So those are the stipulations I want to see, that the stimulus actually gets to workers, and it's not one of those Harper-era stimulus where money went to companies that took the money and then shut down operations in Canada and left for other countries. So it's got to be strings attached to employment. It's got to be connected to jobs.
So maybe something similar to the relief package for Air Canada, because there are some of those stipulations in the relief package for Air, caps on executive compensation and the like.
Exactly. We can do this. We know other examples where it's been done, strong strings attached, which will ensure that the money is going to workers, getting people back to work, keeping people hired, and not going for dividends. The idea of a company taking public health and then paying out dividends, which are publicly available, they're not even hiding it, that they are paying out their shareholders, which means that you're in a profit, which means you're profitable. There's no way you should get public help and then try to pay out dividends to your shareholders. That is so wrong. So we want to see the help actually get to workers. That's key.
Okay, if this was a New Democrat budget, what would be in there in your thinking that will be absent from the Trudeau budget?
Two things that we have really pushed for that we haven't seen so far in any of the leaks or any of the information available. One is the big question is who pays for this pandemic? And that is a very vital question because the debt and deficit question is raising and people are worried. And they're worried that it's going to fall on everyday folks, workers that lost their jobs, small businesses that had to shut their doors down. But we know that one thing is very clear. Out of this pandemic, the ultra-rich actually got richer. So we've been calling for a wealth tax. The only way for us to get at the fact that the ultra-rich made record profits in the pandemic, increased their wealth.
What's ultra-rich? What's ultra-rich?
Well, I'll give you an example. Canada's 44 wealthiest billionaires increased their wealth by over $62 billion during this pandemic. We put in a proposal that we should have a tax on excess wealth. So anyone who's got a fortune of over $20 million, that the excess wealth over that should be taxed. And that proposal is something that would get at the fact that the ultra-rich are the ones that should be paying their fair share, should be the ones paying the price, not working families that struggled, not small businesses that have been hurt.
Okay. According to reports, the deficit number. Remember when deficits used to be top secret, Mr. Singh? You had to wait till 4 o'clock, and they'd spring it all upon you. It's like everything is out there now. There's no excitement in it anymore. Everybody's already reported on it and reacted to it. $400 billion deficit. Mr. Singh. Even for someone on the left, you don't think that is an acceptable number or sustainable in any way, do you? You would like that to eventually come back down to earth from wherever it is now in Elon Musk land, Mr. Singh. What do you think?
Well, absolutely, and that's why the wealth tax is so important. That's why making sure that the ultra-rich pay their share is so important. We know that Jeff Bezos and Amazon have increased their wealth massively during this time. We know that corporate grocery store chains like Hale and Weston's have increased their wealth significantly over this time. We know that Netflix, Amazon, Google, these companies make profits off Canadians but don't pay taxes here. We know that there are ways to increase revenue because, and we need to invest in people. There's no way that we can come out of a pandemic and not invest in people. We've seen what that results in, more and more inequality, worse and worse conditions for workers. But we need to get serious about making sure it's those who are at the very, very top, the ultra-rich, that actually pay their fair share.
Okay.
That we're the only party proposing this idea. And if this is not accepted as an idea, the alternatives are either austerity, cutting the help that people need, or putting the burden on people who've already suffered. Both of those options are wrong, in my opinion, and that's why I've been saying we need a wealth tax.
The provincial premiers almost in unison want a new deal on healthcare funding, that the federal portion of the overall healthcare bill has been declining over decades. And they think it should be significantly higher, 20 percentage points higher than it is now. There seems to be very little willingness from Mr. Trudeau's government to significantly increase healthcare spending that would, in a way that would satisfy the provincial premiers. What do you think? Should the federal government shoulder more of the costs of funding healthcare in federalism in Canada?
Yes, without a doubt. We've campaigned on that, and we believe that the federal government initially signed on to the universal healthcare that we're so proud of, and we're equal partners. And over the years, that amount has been eroded. Conservative governments and liberal governments have cut the amount that the federal government contributes, and that was wrong to do. We need to be funding a robust and well-funded healthcare system that can give people the help they need when they need it. And it is important that we back that up with real funding. So absolutely, we should be increasing it. And while Trudeau has done one-off increases, what the premiers are asking for, and on this point I agree with them, is a long-term commitment, that this is not just a one-time amount. If you want to build up a healthcare system, you need ongoing, predictable increases, and that's what they're asking for. And I think when it comes to healthcare, that's very legitimate.
Okay. Would you say right now, based on what you know, I know you haven't seen the budget yet, but I mean, do you think we're going to an election, based on what you know about the budget so far? Do you more or less like what you see, or is there anything that you've heard that you're vehemently opposed to, that you need to see, that you haven't heard about already? Just trying to gauge whether I'm going to have to vote in the middle of a pandemic.
Well, voting in the middle of a pandemic, it's not going to be because of me. I've been really clear on this point. I think that Canadians have also said in a recent poll, they said it would be unfair to Canadians and it would be unsafe to have an election. And I agree. I don't think that's the right thing to do. What we will do is we'll fight for the help that people need, as we've done throughout this pandemic. And a lot of the help that people got, doubling CERB, getting help to students, bringing in the form of paid sick leave that exists, though it needs to be better, bringing in an increase to the wage subsidy. The Liberals started off with a small amount, doing the minimum possible, 10% wage subsidy. We fought to increase it to 75% to cover 75% of a worker's salary to keep them employed. So similarly, we're going to use our leverage and our position to fight for the help that people need. There's lots of ways to do that, but we don't believe it would be right to go to an election right now.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Singh. Stay well, sir. Thank you again.
Always a pleasure, sir. Thank you.
Jagmeet Singh is the leader of Canada's New Democrats. This is the Rob Snow Show on City News.
I wanted to give gifts to my volunteers, so I started making, I knew this is a skill I had, so I made chocolate that had cultural based with a teaching, because culture here is not just a little part, it's the large part, it's the fundamental part of our organization. So then we started doing, just little programs, and we sell a few at a fair. And then we started getting contracts. People were starting to enjoy the chocolates, and started getting more and more contracts all across Canada. Then we decided to become a social enterprise, and we were able to create 2 jobs. And Val is one of our chocolatiers, very talented. We were able to help her with employment.
We started just with a little bit in the kitchen, doing a little bit of chocolate together, and next thing it's just kind of taken off. And it's great because I love to be creative, and we get to create a lot and make up stuff, and it's just I just love it. It's just great that we get to make money back for Wabano, and it's helping me out, and we're helping just everybody out, Wabano and everything.
We met a very socially conscious business owner being around town, and we decided to partner, because beans and chocolate, coffee and chocolate are sort of created the same way, and there's and they're very one origin bean, so it was a good pairing together. And it's been a fantastic partnership for both of us.
I was fortunate enough to get introduced to Purat, the head of Wabano Fine Chocolates, through a local networking group. And I was completely intrigued by the social enterprise that she was running, and then I looked at what we were doing, trying to support local business and supporting local communities, and it was a perfect match, and it's been fantastic ever since.
We make every batch by hand. We temper it by hand to get to the consistency it needs to be to make a good chocolate. And one of the best, also wonderful things we did, we've connected with Ed, with being around town, and our coffee bars have been amazing hit. So we're really excited about the connection with our coffee.
strong opinions.
The Rob Snow Show returns on Rogers TV and City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Canadian Civil Liberties Association calls what Doug Ford announced on Friday, calls it Black Friday. And it's plotting a court challenge. Abby Deshman is with the Canadian Civil Liberties Association and joins me this morning on City News. Good morning.
Good morning.
Black Friday, very strong language. Black Friday. What is so offensive from a civil liberties point of view?
Well, so, I mean, what the government put into law on Friday was really an unprecedented violation of people's rights and freedoms, constitutional rights. It gave the police the power to pull over anybody, to demand their identification, to ask them really invasive questions that they would have had to answer under the force of law, and also to stop people who are just walking the streets, to similarly demand that they answer questions about why they were outside their homes to determine if they were violating the stay-at-home order. So it was the definition of arbitrary detentions and unreasonable search and seizures. The police didn't have to suspect that anybody was doing anything illegal in order to exercise its powers.
Right.
So from our perspective, clearly unconstitutional, and we are very relieved that that law has been walked back now, and it is, no longer in force.
Okay, so is the court challenge moving forward then?
Well, we were on the phone with our lawyers when the government repealed that regulation. So, no, we put it on hold because, from my perspective, the government came to their senses.
Right. They came to their senses
and walked it back.
Right. They saw the light.
Or the Constitution.
Right. Yeah. But when I say, Abby Deshman, I guess, what is so offensive or what would violate my charter rights that the Ford government proposed on Friday? It sounds like your answer would be like, where do I begin, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. We live in a constitutional democracy. The police can't just randomly stop people, detain them, and demand that they answer questions. We obviously are facing a huge public health crisis, but we still live under the Constitution, and there are limits on the government's power. And what is the law now, which is still an expansion of police powers, is that they have to have a suspicion that you are violating gathering laws, and then they'll be able to ask some questions to see if that suspicion is borne out.
Right.
That's still an expansion of police powers, but it's not the arbitrary random stop power and questioning power that was proposed on Friday.
Okay, yeah. Because I have the right as a Canadian to be secure, right, against unreasonable search and seizure. Though that one of my legal rights.
That's right. Unreasonable search and seizure, freedom from arbitrary detention, silence.
Yeah.
The right to silence. You don't have to answer the vast majority of police questions.
Where are you going? What is the purpose of your trip? What are you doing out here? These sorts of things, right?
That's right. We are free to walk around. There are obviously limits on those rights, but there are also incredibly important limits on police powers, and we don't live in a police state. And we shouldn't.
Mobility rights, would that be something as well?
Yes,
Mobility
absolutely.
rights?
There's a general right to liberty, a right to walk around in public space. And when we talk about constitutional mobility rights, there's a specific right to be able to cross provincial borders. And that is a new limitation and is still limited. That hasn't changed. So we have concerns about all of the interprovincial travel restrictions as well. That's a bit of a different kettle of fish.
But you have challenged that before, your organization, right?
That's right. Yeah, we challenged some of the East Coast interprovincial restrictions. We're still involved in litigating that. It's now being appealed. So, and we are looking closely at the new Ontario orders. We've been in contact with people who have seriously ill relatives who can't get proper care because there's nobody around to care for them. They haven't been allowed to travel. People who wanted to attend for funerals and were able to fully self-isolate people who live and work on, the opposite sides of a provincial border, which is a very fluid border most of the time, encountering real difficulties navigating some of these checkpoints.
Yeah. So we talked about a lot of the rights that could have potentially been infringed had this moved forward before being walked back by Premier Ford. But another one, and it's something that a lot of people have brought up over the last few days, is equality rights. Section 15, for example, everybody is equal before and under the law. Race, national ethnic origin, color, religion, sex, age, mental or physical disability, sexual orientation, residency, marital status, citizenship. We know that for example, at 6 o'clock in the morning or 9 o'clock at night, who's going to be out, say, violating one of these travel orders or in Quebec a curfew? Well, it might be somebody going to work as an essential worker, maybe in a low-income job. We know from previous reports who's more likely to be pulled over. Well, probably a person of color, right? Big issue, big problem when you're going down that road, right? Abby?
Absolutely. Yeah. We know that Black Ontarians, people of color, Indigenous people are disproportionately questioned, stopped, and charged by the police. And the police are in those neighborhoods more. They interact with certain populations more. So when you give police additional powers, especially powers that are so broad and not tied to, a reasonable suspicion that anyone's breaking the law, those are the communities that are going to bear the brunt